Chapter 45-54. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A second later, the 3,000 elite god kings under the four hall masters unleashed their divine power without any regard for anything else, unleashing their most ferocious attacks. Thousands of divine technique lights once again covered the sky. Millions upon millions of saber light and sword rain, all carrying terrifying destructive power, fiercely struck the defensive formation of Lidu, kaboom. The same shattering sound rang out from all directions of the Li city's defensive array. Cracks instantly appeared on the golden light grand formation, which was thousands of miles in radius. The first barrier of Li city's defensive array was ultimately the most ordinary. How could it withstand the full power of 4,000 god kings? Following an earth-shattering explosion, the golden light formation within a radius of 10,000 miles began to tremble and fall apart. Even though the beastmen were filled with worry and panic, Lai Tian and Yen Li were so angry that their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They hurriedly commanded all the beastmen to repair the defensive array. But there was no time at all. Before the 20,000 beastmen could repair the defensive array, it was completely breached by the four temple masters' subordinates. Crack! Crack! Amidst the sounds of shattering, the first barrier collapsed into pieces, and it transformed into a myriad of divine light fragments that collapsed and dispersed on the spot. Fortunately, when Ji Tianqing was setting up the defensive array, he had calculated that the first barrier was to be sacrificed. It was not connected to his mind. Otherwise, when the first barrier was breached, he would definitely be the first to suffer a backlash and be seriously injured. Kaboom! Following a series of muffled explosions, the first defensive barrier completely collapsed and ceased to exist. The elite god kings under the four temple masters broke the first barrier in one fell swoop. They were all cheering excitedly. Their spirits were high and their spirits were high. No one understood how much pressure they were under when they attacked just now. Fortunately, they risked their lives and attacked with all their might. They successfully breached the first defensive array of Li City. If they had failed, who knew how much anger they would have to endure? At this moment, the 3,000 soldiers of the Kongming Temple were in high spirits and their morale was high. Inside Li City, the 60,000 beastmen were all in a state of panic. They were all filled with hesitation and fear. Apart from the 20,000 beastmen who had participated in the battle, the other 40,000 beastmen were all holed up in their own residences, caves, and palaces. They were too weak to participate in the battle. They could only pray silently in their hearts, hoping that the beast race could survive this calamity. As for the 20,000 beasts participating in the battle, they were under the greatest pressure and were extremely tense. Before the battle began, Ji Tianqing had given Lai Tian and Yen Li an order and explained the situation. Ji Tianqing had made it clear from the very beginning that there were 3 layers of defensive formations and barriers in Li City. In the end, the Kongming Temple could break through all of them. However, before the 3 layers of barriers were broken, they had to buy enough time. The first defensive barrier would have to last for at least 2 hours. As for the second barrier, it would have to last for at least a day. As for the third defensive barrier, Ji Tianqing had spent the most effort on it. It had to last for at least 3 days. Only then could Li City last for 4 days and wait for the beastmen under the various lords to surround and attack the Kongming Temple soldiers from the outside. At that time, the beastmen of Li City would have a chance of survival. But now, the development of the situation had exceeded everyone's expectations. The two sides had just started fighting, and in less than 10 breaths of time, the first defensive formation had been broken. The difference between 10 breaths of time and 2 hours was simply too great. One could imagine how terrified and tormented the 20,000 beastmen participating in the battle were when the first barrier collapsed. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing's rallying power, Lai Tian and Yen Li's dominance were all very strong. Thanks to the past 2 months, Ji Tianqing had established a strong and trustworthy image in the hearts of all the beastmen. Even when the first barrier was broken, the 20,000 beastmen did not collapse or be defeated. They still obeyed orders and held on to Ji Tianqing's trust and expectations as they immediately threw themselves into the battle. Everyone's divine power immediately poured into the second defensive formation. Buzz! In an instant, the golden light barrier within a radius of 5,000 kilometers became even more dazzling, and its power increased by more than 3 times. The second defensive formation was not just purely defensive, but also began to add a large number of offensive and counterattack methods. When the 20,000 beastmen poured their divine power into it, the entire formation quickly activated, and its power also reached its peak. A ferocious aura of slaughter was immediately released from the formation, enveloping an area of 50,000 kilometers. The cheering and celebrating elites of the Kongming Temple immediately fell silent when they sensed the overwhelming killing intent. The suffocating aura of slaughter made all the elite godly kings understand that their all-out attack was only beginning to bear fruit. They had only broken through the first defensive formation. According to the first Hallmaster's orders, Li City currently had 3 layers of barriers, and each layer was more powerful than the last. They had only broken through the first layer, which was the weakest defensive formation. It was not worth cheering or celebrating. They were still far from victory, far from breaching Li City. After calming down, the 3,000 elite godly kings obeyed the orders of the 4 Hallmasters and once again attacked with all their might. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Whoosh 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 whoosh. In the next instant, tens of thousands of divine art lights, carrying the power to destroy everything, crashed into Li City's defensive formation. Bam bam bam. Rumble. Amidst the deafening explosions, the destructive divine art brilliance caused the second defensive formation to tremble, and the divine light exploded. Although the second defensive formation did not shatter, and there were no cracks. But the 3,000 godly kings of the Kongming Temple had sufficient knowledge and judgment. They could all see that Li City's second defensive formation was not as strong and indestructible as they had imagined. As long as they could shake it, they had absolute confidence in defeating it. Kill. Continue to charge. Don't stop, Li City's defensive formation will not last more than a few times. This time, without the 4 Hallmasters' orders, the 3,000 godly kings spontaneously shouted to boost each other's morale. Without the 4 Hallmasters' orders, the 3,000 elite godly kings immediately launched a second round of attacks. Boom boom boom. Divine art lights once again blotted out the sky, and saber lights and sword shadows that blotted out the sun fell, smashing into the flickering golden formation. With another boom, the second defensive formation still shook violently, rippling as if it could not bear the burden. And in reality, the golden formation that spanned 10,000 miles still did not show any cracks. Seeing this scene, the elite godly kings of the Kongming Temple were shocked, and their unwillingness to lose was aroused. As for the 4 Hallmasters and the first Hallmaster, they all frowned, their faces turning grim. Chapter 45-55. I didn't expect that the divine array set up by that young god emperor would be so powerful. Ha ha ha. Looks like we underestimated that guy's strength. What are you afraid of? So what if the defensive array he set up is powerful? We will definitely be able to break it. Give me a little more time, I will definitely be able to find the flaw in his array. Not just the few Hallmasters, the various God King experts under the Kongming Temple also started discussing. While everyone was still in shock, they were racking their brains to think of a way to break Ji Tianqing's defensive formation. Even though the Kongming Temple experts all knew that there was nothing special about the defensive array set up by Ji Tianqing, nor was it that profound or exquisite. But the strange thing was that such a basic and ordinary array could produce an extraordinary effect when combined together. Even if the 4 Hallmasters focused on studying for an hour, they could not come up with a way to break it. During this hour, more than 3,000 elite powerhouses of the Temple of Emptiness had been working together to cast spells and attack. However, no matter how powerful the divine abilities released by everyone were, they were unable to shake the second layer of the defensive array. Tens of thousands of divine technique light rays fiercely bombarded the golden light barrier, but could only cause it to sway left and right. Even at the most critical moment, fine cracks appeared on the golden light barrier within a radius of 10,000 miles, but it still did not shatter. The attack that lasted for an hour made the 3,000 God King experts of the Kongming Temple feel slack and powerless. Without the four Hall Masters' orders, many God King experts were powerless and slowed down the speed of their attacks. And at this time, the head Hall Master's anger poured down. He sent a message to the four Hall Masters, asking why they could not come up with a solution after studying and probing for an hour. What should they do to break the defensive array set up by Ji Tianqing? What method should they use? What divine abilities should they use to break Ji Tianqing's array? Unfortunately, no matter how hard the four palace masters thought about it, they still could not get what they wanted. They had no choice but to admit that even though their cultivation realms were higher than Ji Tianqing's, their attainments in the array Dao were still inferior. Even though the first palace master was furious and reprimanded the four palace masters, it was useless. In the end, the first palace master had to personally take action to find and explore the method to break the formation. This gave the beastmen in Li City a chance to catch their breaths. The reason why the second barrier was so resilient and unbreakable was largely due to the 20,000 beastmen. If they hadn't given it their all and poured in their divine power to strengthen the formation, it wouldn't have been able to hold on for so long. However, after the Kongming Temple slowed down their attacks, the 20,000 beasts took turns to rest and recuperate. At the same time, Lai Tian and Yen Li began to speak to encourage their people. Skysplitter and Loathing gave high praise and recognition to the spirit of dedication and unity of the beastmen. The two of them also reminded and encouraged him about the pressure and problems he would face next. As a result, not only did the 20,000 beastmen not feel tired or fearful, they became even more spirited and their morale soared. This result surprised Skysplitter and Yen Li. They didn't dare to believe it. Why were their people still so excited when they had already explained the difficulties and challenges they were about to face? They didn't understand, so they went to ask Ji Tianqing. After all, this move was taught to them by Ji Tianqing. Before this battle, they would never do something like this. In the minds of the beast men, it was either fight or die. There was no such thing as flowery words. However, it was Ji Tianqing's instructions and teachings that made them realize that this was the true medical skill of language. In just a few sentences, the same thing could be said in a different way and it had an unexpected effect. At this moment, Skysplitter and Yen Li were very impressed by Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing's answer to them was, being open and honest with their people and fighting side by side with them was the best strategy. Compared to intimidation and coercion, this was always the best way to win people's hearts. Skysplitter and Yen Li deeply agreed. Of course, they had already lived for tens of thousands of years and gathered countless beast men under their command. It was impossible for them not to understand this principle. However, in these tens of thousands of years, the beast men had never suffered a great calamity. Skysplitter and Yen Li had also never tried this method. They understood the principle behind it, but they had never put it into practice. However, Ji Tianqing's words made them realize that in the future, when they led the beast men under their command, they had to use both strength and gentleness. They couldn't be like before, using iron and blood methods and discipline to suppress all their people. Although this method was very effective, it definitely wasn't the best method. It couldn't allow their people to unleash their strongest combat strength. Within Li City, Ji Tianqing, Skysplitter, and Yen Li were still discussing how to deal with the situation. The 20,000 beast men were still taking turns to rest. At this moment, the four Hall Masters and over 3,000 Divine King experts were also slowing down their attacks and taking turns to rest. No Divine King expert could endure a long period of high-intensity attacks. After all, they weren't God Emperor. They couldn't reach the realm where their divine power circulated endlessly and would never tire. Many Divine King experts stopped fighting in an orderly manner. They took out divine pills and consumed them, circulating their techniques to recover their divine power. At the same time, the head Hall Master was using a divine ability and secret technique with a solemn expression. He carefully observed Li City's second barrier, looking for a way to break it. Obviously, whether or not the Temple of Kongming would be able to break through the Li capital, the key point would be him. This made him very pressured. Of course, it also made the 4 Hall Masters and over 3,000 Divine King experts feel even more pressured. The entire Kongming Temple's elite forces were gathered here, but no one could break through Li City's second defensive barrier. In the end, they still needed the head Hall Master's help. What did this mean? It only meant that the Kongming Temple experts were useless. That's right. When the head Hall Master reprimanded the 4 Hall Masters, he used this word. However, when the problem finally fell on the head Hall Master, the 4 Hall Masters and over 3,000 Divine King experts were relieved. Because the head Hall Master had to solve this problem to prove that everyone was useless, and he was qualified for the position of head Hall Master. If even he couldn't solve it, didn't that mean he was useless too? At that time, with so many elites of Kongming Temple, how would they break through Li City? Sweat. Drop after drop of sweat seeped out from the head Hall Master's forehead. However, he quickly used his divine power to wipe it away. His eyes flickered with a crimson light. He stared at Li City's defensive array intently, observing and studying it with incomparable seriousness. This array with a circumference of 10,000 miles was formed by dozens of array formations pieced together, but it also contained thousands of variations. Although the method of setting up the array was the most common among Emperor-level divine arrays. However, the thought process of setting up the array was too active, and there were too many variations. The head Hall Master had to understand everything before he could consider the method of breaking the array. Chapter 45-56. Time passed quietly. The Kongming Temple's attacks also slowed down. Even though the sky was filled with divine skill light, it did not hurt or itch the defensive array. Both sides were consciously recuperating and recovering their divine power. After all, everyone knew that this battle was a protracted one and could not be resolved in a day. The soldiers on both sides could still maintain a peaceful state of mind. They only needed to rest, recover their divine power, and participate in the battle. However, the commanders on both sides were burning with anxiety. Lai Tian and Yen Li had already followed Ji Tianqing's instructions and used a secret technique to issue a summons to the people under the lords. At least tens of millions of beasts had received the summons. Among them, hundreds of thousands of elite beasts with formidable battle prowess had been selected and were rushing over to reinforce Li City. However, the territories of the lords were a certain distance away from each other. They could not rush over quickly. The battle situation was so tense that the 800,000 Beast Clan people had to rush over as quickly as possible. Therefore, Lai Tian and Yen Li were very anxious. On average, they would send messages to the soldiers every 4 hours, urging them to reinforce Li City as soon as possible. Only Ji Tianqing was as calm as ever, remaining calm and collected. After all, the second barrier could last for a while. He still had many trump cards that he had not used. No matter how panicked Lai Tian and Yen Li were, all changes were within his calculations. Even if there were heavy casualties in the end, he had enough confidence to ensure his own safety. Even if he could not win, he could escape safely and think of a countermeasure. On the other side, the 4 palace masters and the head palace master were also in a state of anxiety. Especially the head palace master, who had observed the second barrier of Li City more than 20 times in 10 hours. It could be confirmed that he had grasped all the details and did not miss any key points. However, he spent a few more hours to repeatedly deduce and test the defensive array and came up with more than 10 solutions. But in the end, he still could not find the best solution. This made him feel extremely ashamed and embarrassed. Even if the 4 palace masters and soldiers did not dare to laugh at him, he still felt very angry and ashamed. Damn it! That kid is only at the God Emperor initial stage. His skills and strength in setting up the divine array are only at the God Emperor initial stage. Why? Why am I, a dignified upper stage God Emperor, unable to break his array formation? Where did he learn so many bizarre and unheard of methods of setting up formations? The first palace master roared and cursed in his heart, feeling very confused. From his point of view, Ji Tianqing seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. Not only was its origin mysterious, even the method of setting up the formation was extremely foreign and unprecedented. It was as if this guy was not from the planet of origin at all. Half a day later, the first palace master ran out of ideas. He had to admit that he couldn't think of a perfect way to break the formation in such a short amount of time. He could only silently admit defeat and give the order with a gloomy face. It will be difficult to break the formation in a short period of time. Our opponent is very strong and cannot be underestimated. And we can't delay any longer. We have to break through the barrier of Li City in one go and exterminate the beasts as soon as possible. I order all members of the Kongming Temple to go all out and attack at all costs. They must break through the defensive barrier. I will participate in the battle and take action personally. Those who slack off will be beheaded without mercy. After a short few breaths, the first palace master's order was passed down to the 4 palace masters and more than 3,000 divine king powerhouses. After everyone heard the order, their first reaction was shock. My God! The first palace master actually admitted that he failed. How can this be? There's still an array formation that the first palace master can't break in this world. The first palace master studied for a full 12 hours. I didn't expect that he still couldn't find a way to break the formation. That young God Emperor's array Dao attainments are high to what extent? Too despicable. That guy is too cunning. If he has the ability, remove the grand array and fight it out with real swords and spears. Hoo. Only the weak and incompetent will rely on the protection and blessings of the array formation. If he dares to remove the defensive grand array, will definitely flatten the city and exterminate all living things. More than 3,000 divine king powerhouses discussed animatedly in private. Even the 4 palace masters felt that it was unexpected and were rather shocked in their hearts. Even before this, they already knew that Ji Tianqing's strength was very powerful and was not to be trifled with. But they did not expect that Ji Tianqing's array Dao attainments were already powerful to such an extent, making even the first palace master feel troubled. Under the circumstances where there was no other way, the 4 palace masters and the 3,000 over divine king powerhouses could only give up all of their fantasies. Since they could not break the formation, then they could only attack with all their might and forcefully breach Li City's second barrier. Hence, the Kongming Temple's 4-pronged great army launched a new round of attacks again. This time, the 3,000 over elite divine kings already recovered more than half of their divine power after recuperating and adjusting their breathing. When they gave up all of their fantasies and attacked with all their might, the divine abilities and consummate skills released, the power far surpassed before. The divine art light that blotted out the sky was even more dazzling and eye-catching than before. The ear-splitting loud noise was even more frenzied than before, shaking heaven and earth. And the power of the 4-pronged great army joining hands also far surpassed before, even more apocalyptic. All of a sudden, the beastmen of Li City felt an immense pressure. The golden light barrier in a radius of 10,000 miles also started shaking violently, bursting with cracks. Rumble. Bang. 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 Boom. Crack. Amidst the series of loud noises, the golden light barrier tottered on the verge of collapse. Countless divine light fragments exploded, splattering in all directions, covering the sky in a radius of 50,000 miles. The situation was critical. The 20,000 beast race citizens all clenched their teeth tightly, casting spells without regard for anything, maintaining the defensive grand array. Skysplit and Loathing also learned the method of boosting morale, casting spells to maintain the grand array while encouraging the beast race citizens, bolstering their courage, and cheering them on. Ji Tianqing's expression also became solemn, sitting cross-legged in the sky above Li City, both hands constantly forming divine seals to cast spells, rapidly repairing the cracks in the defensive barrier. Both sides' battle entered a stalemate state once again. Even though neither side sacrificed a single person, the point of contention was in the details. Every crack and loophole in the defensive grand array determined the outcome of the battle. Time still flowed by mercilessly. 12 hours, 24 hours, 38 hours. Unknowingly, 24 hours passed. A full 2 days' time. Li City's second defensive barrier actually lasted for a full 2 days. Until the morning of the third day, the Golden Light Barrier in a radius of 10,000 miles was finally breached by the Kongming Temple's army. This result was not expected by anyone. Not only the Kongming Temple's experts, even the beast race citizens, Skysplit, and Loathing were very surprised. The first to be breached was the south of Li City. Because the Lord Hallmaster had driven the battleship to the south of Li City and personally cast spells to attack. Chapter 45-57. Rumble. Kachak. Kachak. A series of muffled sounds exploded, reverberating endlessly between heaven and earth. With a crisp cracking sound, the second defensive barrier that enveloped Li City was finally breached by the Temple of Kongming. The first palace lord gripped the divine scepter and stood proudly in the sky, his robes and hair dancing in the wind. He exuded a powerful and dignified aura. In the sky in front of him, millions of shards of divine light flew through the air. Berserk shockwaves, wrapped in countless shards of divine light, transformed into a flood of multicolored light that blotted out the heavens. This scene made the first palace master's figure seem even more majestic. Not far behind him, the 1,000 elite god kings of the Kongming Temple were cheering in excitement, cheering for the first palace lord's heroism. After 2 days of continuous high-intensity spellcasting and attacks, all the soldiers were exhausted. Fortunately, the first palace lord had personally used an emperor-level divine artifact to break through the second barrier of Li capital. Otherwise, the 4 palace lords and the 3,000 soldiers would have had to attack for another 2 days before they could break through. From this moment on, the mentality of the Kongming Temple soldiers had changed. In the past, they were proud, believing that the Kongming Temple was so powerful that they had the right to look down on everything. The palace masters had gathered 4,000 elites to chase after a young divine monarch of the flood race. Many people were cursing in their hearts, thinking that they were making a mountain out of a molehill. But now, no one dared to think such a thing. Everyone realized that the enemy of the Kongming Divine Palace was too powerful. It was beyond their expectations. No one dared to dream that they could easily deal with the young flood god emperor and all the beast race in Li capital. They only hoped that the palace lords were strong enough to end this war as quickly as possible. Moreover, they could minimize the casualties of the soldiers as much as possible. After a long while, the heaven-shaking explosions gradually faded away, and the shards of divine light also disappeared. Everyone's eyes were focused on the palace lords. The soldiers gasped for breath as they waited for the next order from the palace masters. The Grand Palace Master wanted to continue casting spells and lead all the elite deity kings to attack, breaking through the third defensive formation in one go. But on second thought, the second defensive formation was already so brilliant that it took the Kongming Temple 2 days to break through. It could be imagined that the third defensive formation of Li City would be even more powerful. It would take more than 3 to 5 days for them to break through it. Looking at the soldiers of the Kongming Temple, which one of them wasn't exhausted, panting, and pale? Only a few palace masters were able to preserve their strength and were calm and composed. Those elite godly kings were all lacking in godly power, and their strength had declined greatly. In their current state, even if they pulled themselves together and attacked with all their might, they might not be able to do much. Thus, the head hallmaster could only wave his hand and give the order, "Everyone, continue to cast your spells and attack with all your might." Now that Lee City's second defensive formation has been broken, victory is already in sight, and we will soon be able to kill our way into Lee City. But everyone must guard against arrogance and rashness, you must not be reckless. From now on, everyone will rest and recuperate for 3 days. After 3 days, you will continue to act according to orders and strive to break through Lee City in one go. The vigorous voice reverberated in the sky, and the thousands of elite godly kings heard it clearly, and immediately revealed an expression of relief. Just now, everyone was still worried that if the head hallmaster gave the order for everyone to continue attacking, then they would suffer. Fortunately, the head hallmaster was not blinded by victory, and could still maintain his calm and control the situation. 3 days of rest, although it sounded very short, was enough for everyone to recover most of their godly power. Thus, after all the soldiers said yes in unison, they all rested where they were. The battlefield quickly quieted down, and everyone took the godly pills in an orderly manner, circulating their godly power to recover. The head hallmaster also left quietly, rushing to the east of Lee City. Of course, he had already used his divine thought to inform the other 3 palace masters, and gave them the order. Within Lee City, the heavens and earth within a radius of 10,000 miles were shrouded in a heavy and oppressive atmosphere. Although the 50,000 Beast Clan citizens had long been mentally prepared, and knew that the second defensive formation of Lee City would be broken through sooner or later. In fact, even the third defensive formation might not be able to withstand the attack of the Kongming Temple, and it was very likely that it would be broken through. At that time, the 50,000 Beast Clan citizens would have to bear the brunt of the weapons, and most of them would not be able to escape, and would definitely die here. However, when the second defensive formation was broken through and collapsed, all the Beast Clan citizens' hearts trembled, and they secretly clenched their fists. Even if they were mentally prepared, when the moment truly arrived, they would still be nervous, worried, anxious, and even fearful. The second defensive formation was broken through, which meant that there was only one last barrier left in Lee City. Even if they were very confident in the third barrier, and knew that its defensive power was very strong, they also knew that this barrier would definitely be broken through. The only question was how long it would take to break through the Kongming Temple. Many Beast Clan citizens secretly calculated that it might be 3 days. There were also a small number of Beast Clan citizens who had fantasies and expectations about the third formation, and felt that it would take at least 5 days to break through. As for Lai Tian and Yen Li, they announced to the vast number of Beast Clan citizens that it would take at least 10 days for the Kongming Temple to break through. Even if the 2 of them said so repeatedly, they vowed solemnly. However, the Beast Clan citizens did not believe them at all, and only felt that they were deliberately exaggerating in order to boost morale. Lai Tian and Yen Li wasted a lot of time talking before they helplessly discovered that the encouragement method they had just learned suddenly lost its effectiveness. There was really no other way, and the 2 of them were burning with worry. Lai Tian hurriedly went to find Ji Tianqing to ask for a countermeasure. Ji Tianqing was still sitting cross-legged in the center of Lee City, and his eyes were closed as he silently meditated. It looked like he was not doing anything, and was only recuperating and adjusting his breathing. However, in reality, his consciousness had merged with the third defensive formation, and he was modifying and adjusting the formation. Not only did he have to repair the flaws in the formation, making it more perfect, but he also had to change the structure of the formation. It was very necessary to do so. This was because previously, the Lord Hallmaster's divine consciousness had penetrated the 3 defensive formations, and carefully examined the structure of the third formation. Next, when the Kongming Temple launched another attack, the Lord Hallmaster would be able to quickly identify the weak points of the formation, and then concentrate his strength to attack. Ji Tianqing had to modify the formation so that the Lord Hallmaster would not know where to start. The more than 3,000 godly kings of the Kongming Temple would also have to spend a lot of time to do so. When his modification work was nearing its end, Lai Tian rushed over with a worried expression and landed in front of him. Chapter 45-58. Long Tian, the situation is not good. Lai Tian said with a solemn expression. He was worried sick at heart. Ji Tianqing was still sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. His expression was calm and he did not respond. Seeing this, Lai Tian understood that Long Tian was working on something and should not be disturbed. Therefore, he did not say anything and waited quietly. He thought to himself that if Long Tian did not respond in 15 minutes, he would turn around and leave. After all, the current situation was too tricky and no one could do anything about it. Fortunately, after a short 100 breaths, Ji Tianqing finished channeling the technique and opened his eyes. He looked at Lai Tian calmly and knew what Lai Tian was worried about. What's the hurry? Wasn't it to be expected that the second defensive formation would be breached? Moreover, it took the godly temple of Kongming 2 days to break through, which is already beyond our expectations. Compared to the original plan, we have gained 1 more day. Ji Tianqing said. His voice was steady and powerful and his breath was calm and peaceful. Lai Tian was originally worried and anxious, but when he heard his voice, he felt relieved and calmed down. That's right, I know what you said. Lai Tian nodded and smiled bitterly. He spread out his hands and said, but the problem now is that after the second defensive array was broken, all the people are very depressed and worried. Especially the 20,000 people who participated in the battle. They have used up too much divine power and are very tired and weak. Now that their morale is low, I can't help but worry if they can stop the Kongming Temple's next attack. It was obvious that not only were the people of the Beast Clan panicking and worried, even Lai Tian was not confident and anxious. Ji Tianqing did not respond to Lai Tian's words but asked, how long will it take for the reinforcements to reach Li City? Lai Tian thought for a while and answered, those who are closer will need 3 days. Most of them will need 10 days and the furthest will need a month. However, there are 3 reinforcements that are closest to us and will probably arrive tomorrow. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and ordered, when the 3 reinforcements arrive, tell them to stay 400,000 li away and wait for orders. Do not act rashly. Lai Tian was a little stunned. He asked, shouldn't they take the opportunity to ambush the Kongming Temple's army? Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, even if the number of reinforcements is as many as 30,000, their overall strength is too low. Rashly attacking will only expose our whereabouts and our plan. It won't be of much use. Moreover, after the Kongming Temple broke through the second defensive formation, it had used up too much energy and was currently in a state of emptiness. Currently, the 4 armies of the Kongming Temple had stopped fighting and were resting. According to my estimation, they will need to rest for at least 3 days before they can regain their combat strength. Ah! Really? Lai Tian was stunned for a moment. He felt very surprised and couldn't help but reveal a pleasantly surprised expression. If that's really the case, that's great. The anxiety in his heart immediately dissipated by more than half. His thoughts became active again. He hurriedly asked, no wonder the Kongming Temple didn't react after the second formation was broken. Since we can delay for 3 more days, our chances of winning are higher. Long Tian, we should take advantage of these 3 days to set up 2 more divine formations. This way, we can delay for even more time. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and explained, the people of the Kongming Temple need to rest for 3 days. Don't the 20,000 people of the Beast Clan who participated in the battle need to rest and adjust their breathing? They are also very weak. When the formation was broken, there were even thousands of people who suffered from the backlash and were seriously injured. Lai Tian frowned and asked, I know this too. What should we do? Don't tell me we don't set up the formation anymore. Ji Tianqing answered, just in case, we still have to set up the formation. However, I will join forces with the divine kings under my command. You and Yen Li will cooperate. The other people of the Beast clan will take turns to rest in an orderly manner. You must remain vigilant. In addition, inform the reinforcements that no matter which reinforcements arrive, they must stay 400,000 miles away and wait for orders. No matter how critical the situation is, as long as Li Du hasn't fallen, they cannot act rashly. Lai Tian nodded repeatedly to express his agreement with the first few sentences. But the last two sentences made Lai Tian frown. He was very puzzled. Do we have to wait until Li Du is broken before letting the reinforcements take action? If that's the case, what's the use of us summoning them? Originally, the reinforcements came to help to protect Li Du. If the reinforcements took action after Li Du was broken, there wouldn't be much meaning in it. Ji Tianqing was too lazy to explain too much. He only responded with one sentence. The reinforcements are our trump card. They must be used at the most critical moment. Only then can we kill them in one blow. Lai Tian thought for a while and roughly understood what he meant and guessed his plan. He completely calmed down and became more confident and expectant. After bidding farewell to Ji Tianqing, Lai Tian turned to leave. He comforted the people of the Beast clan and arranged for them to take turns to rest in an orderly manner. Ji Tianqing also started to get busy. He took out the god-slaying battleship and summoned many of his friends and family. Ji Tianqing had already explained to everyone about the war between the Beast clan, Li Du, and the Kongming Temple. So when everyone appeared, Ji Tianqing didn't have to explain much. They knew what to do. Ji Tianqing selected 300 God King experts and gave each of them 3 Emperor-level divine weapons. He also arranged for everyone to stand. After that, Ji Tianqing took charge of the situation and started to cast spells to set up the Emperor-level divine formation. The 300 God King experts led by Yun Yao and Ji Ku also activated their divine power in an orderly manner. They cooperated with Ji Tianqing to set up the formation. Originally, the tens of thousands of people of the Beast clan were gloomy and filled with worry and fear. Seeing Ji Tianqing leading a large group of God King experts to set up the divine formation in the sky, the people of the Beast clan felt much more at ease. At this moment, Lai Tian gave another series of orders and arranged the tasks in an orderly manner. The people of the Beast clan gradually calmed down and their panic gradually dissipated. 2 hours later, all the tasks were arranged and everything was carried out in an orderly manner. After Lai Tian and Yen Li were done with their work, they met up again. Yen Li's expression was a little strange. She looked like she wanted to say something but stopped. Lai Tian saw the clue and asked, "Yen Li, what's wrong? Do you have something to say to me? Or did something happen?" Yen Li hesitated and looked at Ji Tianqing, who was busy setting up the formation in the sky. She transmitted her voice to Lai Tian and said, "Lai Tian, don't you feel that something is strange? Li Du is our territory and the entire Beast clan is our people. That Long Tian was originally our slave and had to submit to us and work for us. But now, he seems to have become the master of Li Du and is in control of the situation. Even you and I have to listen to his orders." Chapter 45-59. Lai Tian was stunned by Yen Li's words. He had to admit that it was the truth. If it wasn't for Yen Li's reminder, he wouldn't have even realized it. At this moment, both of them were silent, carefully recalling what had happened before, trying to find the turning point of the relationship between the two sides. However, even after thinking for a while, the two of them still could not remember when Long Tian had taken the initiative and become the host. Since they couldn't figure it out, Lai Tian simply stopped thinking about it. It's useless to think about it now. Anyway, we've already adapted and tacitly agreed. Li City is already in such a situation. If you and I were in control of the overall situation, it would be impossible to achieve this. the 50,000 people would have been slaughtered long ago. Lai Tian looked around the entire Li city and transmitted his voice to Yen Li. Even if he's more like the master of Li city than us, even you and I listen to his orders, that's because he's really qualified. I know what you're worried about, but I think you can completely dispel it. A guy who gave the 5 temple masters of Kongming Temple such a headache, of course he's qualified to take charge of the overall situation for us. Moreover, I believe that with his strength and vision, when our agreement is up, he'll definitely leave. What you're worried about won't happen. Yen Li frowned and thought for a long time. He could only sigh and say, alas. I hope I'm measuring the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. Lai Tian patted him on the shoulder and said with a smile, although I'm not as good as you in some aspects, I believe I'm not bad at judging people. The situation is already like this, we should believe in him. Yen Li nodded and didn't say anything more. Time passed very quickly. A day later, there were 3 beast men who were closer to Li city than the rest of the beast men. These 3 reinforcements had about 30,000 people, and their strength was between the 8th level of the Divine Monarch realm and the 5th level of the Divine King realm. Most of them were upper Divine Monarchs and peak Divine Monarchs. Only 30% of them were lower Divine Kings and a small number of middle Divine Kings. They were worried about Li city's safety and rushed over with murderous intent. However, they didn't directly rush to Li city to attack the Kongming Temple's army. They had no choice. Before arriving at Li city, they received orders from Lai Tian and Yen Li. Therefore, the 3 reinforcements hid 400,000 kilometers away and waited patiently. 2 days later, among the 4 armies of Kongming Temple, a few God King experts gradually recovered their divine energy. At the same time, some of the beasts in Li city were gradually recovering their divine power. Ji Tianqing and the 300 God King powerhouses under his command continued casting for 2 days and successfully set up the 4th defensive array. Finally, the 3-day deadline was up. The beast men in Li city were still taking turns to recuperate, seizing every second to recover their strength. The 4 armies of the Kongming Temple received the order at the same time and stopped circulating their martial arts to regulate their breathing. More than 3,000 elite Divine King powerhouses quickly assembled and silently arranged themselves into a battle formation. Even though only 20% of the God King's power had returned to normal, and only more than half of the remaining 80% had returned. But no one complained, and no one dared to stall for time. The reason why these Divine King powerhouses were called the elites of Kongming Temple was not only because of their strength, but also because of their high level of discipline. Not long after, following the orders of the 4 temple masters, the 3,000 elite Divine Kings unleashed their powers at the same time. Through the battle formation, they released destructive attacks that fiercely bombarded the 3rd defensive array. Rumble. Bam bam bam. The light of divine techniques that blotted out the sky carried the power to destroy everything as they continuously bombarded the golden light barrier, causing earth-shattering explosions. The golden light barrier, which was thousands of kilometers in radius, trembled violently from the bombardment and flashed with dazzling golden light. The ruins tens of thousands of kilometers around Li city were torn apart by the bombardment. Dust flew everywhere, covering the sky and the sun. The sudden attack caused the earth to shake and the mountains to shake. In an instant, more than 50,000 people in Li city were awakened. The 30,000 beast men who did not participate in the battle suddenly felt their hearts tighten, and their expressions became serious. They knew that the 3-day rest period was over, and the Kongming Temple was about to launch another attack. Many people looked up at the golden light barrier and observed it without blinking. They prayed in their hearts that nothing would happen to the barrier. Of the 20,000 beast men who participated in the battle, more than 1,000 were severely injured and could not recover in a short period of time. They had already been replaced. At this moment, 10,000 participants were circulating their energy and recuperating, while the other 10,000 remained vigilant, ready to fight at any moment. When the golden light barrier began to shake, a deafening explosion sounded. The moment the battle began, the 10,000 participants did not even need the orders of the temple masters to attack. Out of instinct, they released their violent divine power and injected it into the defensive array, increasing the array's power. The golden light barrier only shook a dozen times before quickly stabilizing. The dazzling golden light that flashed chaotically also quickly extinguished, returning to calm and stability. No matter how the four armies of the Kongming Temple attacked with all their might and used all kinds of divine techniques, they could not shake the golden light barrier. A full 100 breaths of time passed, and the Kongming Temple's continuous attacks did not achieve any results. Seeing that the golden light barrier was still as strong as before, the worried beastmen finally calmed down. Of course, to be safe, the 10,000 beastmen who were circulating their energy and recuperating also ended their cultivation and joined the battle. The situation was back to normal. The 20,000 beastmen cast their spells at the same time to maintain the third defensive array, increasing its power by several times. The golden light barrier became stronger and stronger, and the four armies of the Kongming Temple found it more and more difficult. Under the guidance of Lai Tian and Yen Li, the beastmen could even control the array and launch a counterattack against the Kongming Temple's army. The two sides fought back and forth fiercely. The beastmen were safe, but the Kongming Temple's main hall began to suffer casualties, and their numbers slowly decreased. This affected the morale of the Kongming Temple to a certain extent. Especially those divine kings who had not recovered their divine power. They deeply felt powerless and were secretly worried. Helpless, the four temple masters could only use all kinds of inspiring slogans to boost the morale of the soldiers. Furthermore, through clever words, they made the 3,000 soldiers realize that this battle would not end in a short period of time. The enemy's strength was very strong and could not be underestimated. If they wanted to break the third defensive array and completely destroy the last line of defense of Li City, they would need at least 5 to 6 days. After the temple master's explanation and persuasion, the 3,000 soldiers finally calmed down. With sufficient mental preparation, they were no longer anxious. They followed orders and fought steadily step by step. Just like that, the two sides entered a stalemate. As time passed, the number of elite divine kings of the Kongming Temple decreased at the rate of 3 to 5 deaths every 2 hours. Chapter 45-60. A day passed. Both sides were still in a stalemate, and it was hard to tell who would win. The process of the battle was very dry and boring, and there was nothing praiseworthy about it. After all, the 3,000 over soldiers of Kongming Temple and the 20,000 Beast Clan citizens were fighting through the defensive array. Before the array was breached, only the soldiers of Kongming Temple were at a disadvantage. The four hall masters had to summarize the results of the first day's battle and report to the first hall master. The main content of the report was the number of soldiers under each hall master's command that had been sacrificed. 32 soldiers under the fifth hall master were sacrificed on the first day, and 15 were seriously injured. 26 elite divine kings under the fourth hall master were killed in battle, and 18 were seriously injured and lost the ability to fight. Under the third hall master, the divine kings under the second palace master, in the end, the conclusion was that 120 elite divine kings were sacrificed on the first day, and 90 were seriously injured and lost the ability to fight. In addition, there was a small problem with the fourth hall master's warship, and it needed to stop the battle for a day before it could be repaired. The four hall masters thought that the first hall master would fly into a rage after receiving the battle report, and he would be very disappointed in everyone. After all, the four armies had not breached the defensive array, and they had not started a direct battle with the Beast Clan, and there were already such casualties. This was too shocking. But to everyone's surprise, the first hall master was calm after reading the battle report, and he did not have much of a reaction. It was as if the number of casualties was within his expectations, and he did not find it strange. Most importantly, more than 100 people had been sacrificed on the first day, and there were still a few days left. By the time the defensive array was breached, wouldn't they have to sacrifice 700 to 800 elite divine kings? How could the first Hall Master not be moved by such heavy losses? The 4 Hall Masters were puzzled, but they did not dare to ask. They could only try to figure it out secretly. Not long after, the Hall Masters finally understood. They all recalled what the first Hall Master had said when he had decided to go all out to kill Ji Tianqing. As long as they could capture the young Hong tribe god emperor, they would not hesitate to sacrifice all the elite divine kings under the Kongming temple. When the 4 palace masters heard this, they only thought that it was an exaggeration and that the first palace master only wanted to express his determination. Unexpectedly, the first palace master really thought so. The first day ended, and the second day arrived. The dull and boring battle did not stop for even a moment. It was still ongoing. Rumble. The earth-shattering sound of explosions reverberated between heaven and earth. Endless shards of divine light mixed with the violent shockwaves, forming a colorful storm of divine light that spread out in all directions, engulfing the heavens and the earth. The land within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles had long been reduced to ruins. It had been repeatedly scoured and bombarded, layer after layer flattened. 24 hours had finally passed. At the end of the second day, the 4 Hall Masters once again counted the casualties of their subordinates and reported it to the head Hall Master. Today, the 4 Palace Masters had slightly adjusted their battle plan. They knew that this was going to be a protracted battle, so they couldn't sacrifice their soldiers like they did yesterday. They had to control the number of casualties. Reality proved that the adjustments made by the 4 Palace Masters were effective. Only 80 elite divine kings had died in today's battle, and only 50 or so had been seriously injured and lost the ability to fight. After the 4 Palace Masters reported the battle situation, they thought that the head Hall Master would feel gratified. Even if there were no substantial rewards, he would still praise them verbally. But in reality, the head Hall Master did not have any reaction after reading the battle report. This made the 4 Palace Masters understand that the head Hall Master did not care about the casualties of his subordinates, nor did he care about the process. He only needed results. The 4 Palace Masters understood the head Hall Master's intentions and continued to participate in the battle. They attacked in an orderly and planned manner. As for the interior of Li City, the atmosphere gradually returned to calmness and stability. The 4 armies of the Kongming Temple attacked continuously for 2 days, but they were still unable to break through the defensive formation. They did not even leave a gap or crack. This filled the tens of thousands of beasts with confidence. They firmly believed that the formation could hold on for another 10 days. Even if the 3rd defensive formation was broken after 10 days, they still had a 4th defensive formation. In short, they would definitely be able to stall for time until reinforcements arrived. The Kongming Temple needed to report the battle results every day, but the beasts who participated in the battle did not need to. Anyway, they had the protection of the defensive formation, so there were no casualties. It was just that everyone's divine power was depleted very quickly, so they could not all participate in the battle at once. Under the arrangement of Lai Tian and Yan Li, they took turns to participate in the battle and were able to get a certain amount of rest. Ji Tianqing did not participate in the battle. As long as the head Hall Master did not participate in the battle, even if the 4 Palace Masters joined forces, Lai Tian and Yan Li were enough to control the formation. Ji Tianqing would only participate when the head Hall Master personally participated. Most importantly, he had used too much divine power to set up the defensive formations previously. He needed to replenish it as soon as possible. In order to recover his divine power as soon as possible, he returned to the distorted spacetime of the divine pagoda and did not hesitate to consume large amounts of divine pills and elixirs, as well as a sea of cultivation resources. The 3rd day ended. The death toll of the Kongming Temple was reduced to 50, and the seriously injured was reduced to 40. The 4th day, the 5th day, the 6th day, the number of casualties was gradually decreasing every day. This proved that the strategy of the four palace masters was correct. However, the power of the four armies' attacks was also gradually weakening, and they were still unable to shake the third defensive formation. More than 3,000 elite divine kings all felt extremely exhausted, and their strength was also greatly reduced. The continuous decline in morale made the four palace masters anxious, and they could only ask the head hall master for instructions. After such a long period of recuperation, the head hall master's strength had recovered to its peak state, and he finally decided to take action. On the morning of the seventh day, he took out his emperor-level divine weapon, waved his sacred scepter, and used his most powerful killing move. His left hand formed a divine art, and his right hand waved the scepter, releasing extremely violent divine power that connected the heaven and earth within a radius of 1,000,000 miles. Endless divine power of heaven and earth gathered from all directions, and under his guidance and control, it condensed into a giant sword that could split the heaven and earth apart. Within a radius of more than 100,000 miles, the 3,000 soldiers of the Kongming Temple all saw the wind and clouds surging, and sand and rocks flying. Moreover, several giant swords that were tens of thousands of feet long appeared high in the sky. The divine power of heaven and earth was condensed to the extreme, and the 6 giant swords that could split the heaven and earth also condensed into a solid form. At this time, the head hall master used 2 more strands of Taoist rhyme, and drew the power of the heavenly Tao into the 6 giant swords. In an instant, the 6 giant swords became resplendent with golden light, sacred and incomparably powerful, and their power was also raised to the extreme, splitting the heaven and earth apart. Finally, the head hall master roared angrily, waving the hollow scepter in his right hand, and pointed it at the Li city's defensive formation. Swoosh! Swoosh! The 6 giant swords that were resplendent with golden light, carried the power to destroy everything, and slashed at the Li city's defensive formation. Chapter 45-61. When the 6 dazzling golden blades slashed down, the space within 100,000 miles froze. More than 3,000 elite godly kings from the Kongming Temple looked up at the sky, staring at the 6 huge blades of light. Everyone was praying that the Lord Hallmaster would personally attack and destroy the third defensive array in one move. If that was the case, this war that had been going on for a long time could finally come to an end, and the soldiers would no longer have to sacrifice their lives. However, the soldiers also understood that this was just wishful thinking, and it was too difficult to realize. After all, the Lord Hallmaster had spent a lot of effort to destroy the second defensive array. Li Du's third defensive grand formation would only be stronger than the second. At the same time, inside Li Du, Lai Tian and Yan Li, who were in charge of the third defensive array, also realized that something was wrong. Their divine senses passed through the defensive array and saw the situation outside, and they also saw the Lord Hallmaster unleashing his full power. When the 6 golden blades slashed down, the 2 of them also became nervous. Without any hesitation, the 2 of them instinctively ordered the 20,000 participating Beast Tribe citizens to unleash their full power, pushing the defensive power of the array to the maximum. The 20,000 citizens had been using their powers to maintain the operation of the defensive array and maintain its stability. Hearing Lai Tian and Yan Li's orders, the 20,000 Beast Tribe citizens released all their divine power without hesitation, desperately activating the power of the defensive array. Swoosh! Suddenly, the defensive array within a radius of 10,000 miles lit up with an even more dazzling light, and the golden barrier became even more solid. At the same time, 6 dazzling golden blades slammed into the defensive formation, causing an earth-shattering boom to erupt. Boom! 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 Amidst the deafening noise, the 6 golden blades suddenly collapsed, exploding into millions of golden fragments that splashed in all directions. The enormous defensive array was also shaken violently by the attacks. Cracking noises were heard, and a few wide cracks appeared on it. Without a doubt, the Lord Hallmaster's full power attack had caused serious damage to the defensive array. After all, he had the strength of an upper-level God Emperor. His control of the divine power of heaven and earth and his understanding of the power of heaven and earth far surpassed Ji Tianqing, Lai Tian, and Yan Li. Fortunately, the defensive formation that Ji Tianqing had set up was made up of hundreds of divine formations. It was very mysterious and its power was unfathomable. If it had been an ordinary emperor-level divine array, a huge hole would have been blasted open on the spot. Even so, the first palace master's all-out attack still caused extremely serious consequences. When a few cracks appeared in the defensive formation, the 20,000 beasts controlling the formation were all shaken to varying degrees. Blood gushed out of the orifices of the 600 beasts closest to him as they let loose anguished cries. The lucky ones were severely injured, their strength dropping drastically, and they lost the ability to fight on the spot. As for the unlucky ones, their divine bodies crumbled, and they exploded into a bloody mist that filled the sky. Only their godheads were left, and they fled in panic. Naturally, the beast men who had their divine bodies destroyed and only had their godheads left were unable to escape from the defensive formation. They could only leave the battle formation and retreat to the central region of Li City to try and heal their injuries. In addition, the cracks in the defensive formation also alarmed Ji Tianqing, who was cultivating in the distorted spacetime. He had personally set up the formation, so he naturally had a connection with it. However, when he was setting up the formation, he had also considered that if the formation was broken, it would affect him. Therefore, he had spent a lot of effort to set up the formation so that he would have a connection with the formation, but he would not suffer a backlash when the formation was broken. The Kongming Temple has only been attacking the formation for 6 days, and they've already broken through the defensive formation. No, it must be the first palace master himself. Only he would have such powerful strength and methods. Ji Tianqing and the first palace master had always been in a state of remote combat, where the two kings could not see each other. The first palace master was the trump card of the Kongming Temple, but Ji Tianqing was also the trump card of Li City. Since the first palace master had personally made a move, Ji Tianqing no longer cultivated and hurriedly left the distorted spacetime. Swoosh! After a short breath, he appeared in the sky above Li City, frowning as he stared at the defensive formation in front of him. He saw that many beasts were filled with fear, and under the command of Lai Skylai and Yan Li, they were busy repairing the cracks in the formation. Most of the beasts were still cultivating, trying to increase the power of the defensive formation to resist the attack of the Kongming Temple army. Rumble! Bam bam bam! Along with the light of various divine arts and the shadows of swords and sabers that blotted out the sky, the defensive formation began to shake, and golden light burst out. The first palace master had just used a supreme skill, but it was only the initial effect, and he was deeply regretful that he could not make the final decision. Therefore, he frowned as he looked at the defensive formation, secretly using the God's Eye secret technique to carefully observe the structure and network of the formation. A moment later, he saw through the clues and revealed a look of sudden realization. No wonder I was so confident that my supreme skill, which I was confident in, could not break the defensive formation of Li City. So that's why. That God Emperor of the primordial tribe is really smart. He realized that I had spied on the structure of the formation, so he modified the entire formation, and even the base and network of the formation were adjusted. Ha ha ha. It seems that he does not have the confidence to fight with us for the time being, so he can only use this method to stall for time. The first palace master muttered to himself, thinking that he had seen through Ji Tianqing's tricks, and the corner of his mouth curled up in a cold smile. However, he did not know that Ji Tianqing's thoughts and tricks were not limited to this. Although the beasts had more than 600 casualties, compared to the 20,000 beasts who participated in the battle, this number of casualties was acceptable. Yan Li quickly arranged for more than 600 beast race people to take the place of the injured and dead, ensuring that the defensive formation operated normally. Moreover, In order to prevent the first palace master from attacking again, Lai Tian and Yen Li were fully focused on casting spells, and the power of the defensive formation was pushed to the maximum. Just as all the beasts were worried and thought that the formation would be broken soon, Ji Tianqing appeared. He did not say anything unnecessary, and directly flew to the sky above Li City, personally casting spells to control the entire defensive formation. Thousands of beasts worked together to cast spells, but the speed of repairing the defensive formation was still too slow. Ji Tianqing personally cast spells to repair the formation at the fastest speed possible. The few cracks on the golden barrier quickly disappeared and healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. After the formation was repaired, Ji Tianqing released his divine sense, passed through the defensive formation, and investigated the movements of the four armies of the Kongming Temple. After grasping the movements of the four armies, he asked Lai Tian via voice transmission how many beasts had arrived in Li City. Chapter 45-62. It had been half a month since the four armies of the Kongming Temple had surrounded them. In other words, Ji Tianqing had already bought half a month of breathing space for the people of the Beast Clan. Next, the Beast Clan's reinforcements would be a force that could not be ignored, and would also be the key to the final battle. Hearing Ji Tianqing's question, Heaven-Splitting Sword did not hesitate and straightforwardly replied, a total of 500,000 reinforcements are coming from 47 different directions. Now, 22 reinforcements have arrived. According to your previous suggestion, I had those 22 reinforcements lurk 400,000 miles away and did not let them act rashly. This result was similar to what Ji Tianqing had expected. With more than 200,000 reinforcements lying in ambush around Li City, he had nothing to worry about. In his original plan, when the third defensive formation was broken, it should also be the final battle. As for the fourth defensive formation he had set up earlier, it was Li City's last life-saving trump card, and it absolutely could not be broken. Of course, the Beast Clan had to win this battle, but they had to win completely. They could not let the entire Li City die with them. Urge the other reinforcements. If they can arrive as soon as possible, that would be for the best. Ji Tianqing sent a sound transmission to Heaven-Splitting Sword and instructed him to do so. Heaven-Splitting Sword quickly responded, indicating that it was already urging him. Long Tian, during this period of time, I have been urging the various reinforcements, but the remaining 25 reinforcements are too far away. Are you so anxious because our third defensive formation won't be able to hold on for much longer? Heaven-Splitting Sword's tone was filled with deep worry. Ji Tianqing calmly replied, this emperor will personally preside over this defensive formation. Even if the Kongming Temple goes all out and the Lord Hallmaster personally takes action, I will still be able to deal with him for a few more days. You don't have to worry, this battle will end very soon. Heaven-Splitting Sword was willing to believe Ji Tianqing's words, but it really couldn't find a reason, nor did it have enough courage to believe the truth of these words. In its opinion, even if the 22 reinforcements lying in ambush around Li City were to rush out and besiege the Kongming Temple's army now, they might not be able to achieve much. Long Tian, it's not just the people. Even I don't feel confident. Can you tell me the truth? How much longer can we hold on? Will we have to rely on the protection of the fourth formation after the third formation is broken? Using this time, you can also set up the fifth and sixth divine formations. It wasn't strange for Lai Tian to have such thoughts. The 50,000 beast race citizens of Li City had all witnessed Ji Tianqing's powerful attainments in the array Dao. In their opinion, as long as Ji Tianqing was willing, he could set up layer after layer of formations to continue stalling for time. Seeing Lai Tian so anxious, the beast men in Li City also began to feel uneasy and fearful. Ji Tianqing could only comfort Lai Tian. Things aren't as you think. We don't need the fourth defensive formation. When the third formation is breached, we can counterattack. Heaven Splitter pondered over his words and roughly understood what he meant. The previous battle had lasted for so long in order to deplete the strength of the Kongming Temple's army. By the time the four armies of the Kongming Temple broke through the defensive formation, they would be exhausted, their strength would plummet, and their spirits would be low. The first Hallmaster was indeed experienced and knowledgeable, and his strength was profound. Even if he had never seen Ji Tianqing's method of setting up formations before, he roughly understood it after observing and studying it carefully for 4 hours. After understanding the structure of the formation, the first Hallmaster realized a problem. 100 king-level divine formations were put together to form this defensive formation. Not only did it have extraordinary power, but it was also unpredictable and could change positions with each other. To be honest, the first Hallmaster was very tempted. He wanted to snatch the method of setting up the formation and increase the strength of the Kongming Temple. For the next day, the four armies of the Kongming Temple continued to attack. They fought until the sky and earth were turned upside down, and the sun and moon lost their light. The first Hallmaster no longer attacked. He had been studying the structure of the defensive formation, looking for the weak points and the key to breaking the formation. Little did he know that while the first Hallmaster was thinking about how to break the formation, Ji Tianqing had already controlled the divine formation and killed over 100 elite king-level divine formations. The four Hallmasters were very angry. They cursed Ji Tianqing for being despicable. A day later, the first Hallmaster finally deduced the foundation and meridians of the defensive formation. He took out the divine artifact scepter again and flew into the sky above Li City. The previous scene replayed itself. The first Hallmaster used all his divine power. His robe flapped violently, and his long hair danced without wind. The divine power of heaven and earth within a radius of 1,000,000 miles was once again drawn by him and gathered in the sky around him. 10 breaths later, the first Hallmaster used the power of the way of the heavens again. He gathered endless power and condensed it into a divine spear that was 10,000 feet long. Spear of Massacre. The first Hallmaster shouted. He formed a divine seal with his right hand and pointed at the defensive formation of Li City. Whoosh! The divine spear, which contained endless killing intent and divine majesty, was aimed at a certain place in the defensive formation and rushed forward. The surrounding space was compressed again and solidified like ice. Everyone's eyes were only left with the rainbow-like divine spear. It was like the wrath of the heavens as it struck the defensive formation. Without a doubt, the location of the divine spear's attack was found by the first Hallmaster. It was the weakness of the formation. Boom! Crack! A deafening explosion sounded. The colorful divine spear suddenly collapsed, and millions of divine light shards flew out. The defensive formation also shook violently. A shallow pit appeared on its surface and was filled with cracks. At this moment, all of the beasts were cheering with excitement as if a massive weight had been lifted off their shoulders. Ji Tianqing silently cast a spell and quickly repaired the pit on the surface of the formation. On the side of the Kongming Temple, the first Hallmaster was stunned and in disbelief. Damn it! That guy had only set up a relatively simple emperor-level divine formation. But why was it that when 100 divine formations were put together, they could produce such terrifying power? Could it be that my calculation was wrong and there was a mistake? After thinking about it, this was probably the only explanation that would work. Thus, the first Hallmaster stopped attacking and continued to observe the defensive formation to find a way to crack it. Another day passed. This time, the first Hallmaster was not as excited as before. He did not research a way to crack the formation and quickly put it into practice. He thought of more than 10 possibilities and summarized them into 6 ways to crack the formation. Then, he began to test them one by one. Boom! Crack! Boom! Boom! Once again, an earth-shattering sound rang out from the battlefield. It was so imposing. The defensive formation of Li City began to tremble and flash with golden light. The pressure was great. However, With Ji Tianqing personally presiding over the formation, there was no need to worry about safety. Chapter 45-63. This battle was no longer a battle between the 4 armies of the Kongming Temple and the 20,000 beasts. It had also become a duel between the first Hallmaster and Ji Tianqing. Separated by the defensive formation, the two powerhouses each performed their own unique skills and secret techniques, displaying techniques and powers that shocked everyone. For 3 whole days, the two sides fought back and forth fiercely. No one stopped to rest. Earth-shattering noises were incessant. The destructive shockwaves continued to spread out in all directions, shaking the sky and the earth. Everything within 200,000 miles of Li City was turned into ruins. In 3 days, the first Hallmaster tried 6 different ways to break the formation, but all of them failed without exception. It was not that he was not strong enough, nor was it that his formation skills were not good enough. It was that the formation set up by Ji Tianqing was flawless and interconnected. It was a formation setup method that the first Hallmaster had never seen before. Most importantly, there was too little time left for him to think and verify. If he was given a month, he would definitely be able to find a way to break the formation. There was another crucial point. While the first Hallmaster was trying various ways to break the formation, Ji Tianqing understood his intentions and was always able to stop him at the crucial moment. After 6 attempts ended in failure, the first Hallmaster finally gave up and no longer hoped to break the formation. The only way was to use their strongest power to break the defensive formation. Only then could they enter Li City. However, the 4 armies of the Kongming Temple, more than 3,000 elite god kings, had already used up most of their divine power and were completely exhausted. They had been attacking for 10 days and had used up about 50 to 60% of their divine power. Now, their combat strength was greatly reduced and their spirits were also very low. No matter how the 4 Hallmasters tried to boost the morale of the elite god kings, it was to no avail. Under such circumstances, it was almost impossible to count on the soldiers to use their strongest power to help the first Hallmaster break the defensive formation. The first Hallmaster felt helpless, but he could not give up just like that. He could only let the 4 Hallmasters use their full strength at all costs and cooperate with him to launch the final fierce attack. On the other side, Ji Tianqing had fought for 3 days and used up a lot of his divine power. He was dispirited and physically and mentally exhausted. Not only did he have to control the defensive formation, but he also had to command the 20,000 elite beasts and fight the Grand Hallmaster from afar. If it wasn't for his extraordinary talent, the heaven-mending pearl, the 5 elements world, and other trump cards that could continuously transfer divine power, he would have consumed more than half of his divine power long ago, and his strength would have dropped greatly. For 3 whole days, the army of the Kongming Temple had broken through the defensive formation countless times, creating cracks and gaps in the golden barrier. However, Ji Tianqing was always able to repair those cracks and gaps in the shortest amount of time, never allowing the Kongming Temple's experts to take advantage of the situation. Similarly, the 20,000 beast race elites had been fighting for nearly 10 days. They were also exhausted. No matter what method Skysplitter and Loathing used, they were unable to boost their morale, much less tap into their potential. After all, the 20,000 elite beast men had used up too much energy and were simply too exhausted. Skysplitter and Loathing were very anxious. Looking at the 20,000 elite beast men in such a state, they didn't dare to imagine what kind of tragic result it would be when the Kongming Temple broke through the defensive formation. While the 2 of them assisted Ji Tianqing in resisting the attacks of the Kongming Temple, they also asked Ji Tianqing what the next plan was. Ji Tianqing, on the other hand, was not in a hurry. The current situation was within his expectations. Facing Skysplitter and Loathing's questions, he said calmly, "We're not the only ones who are exhausted. The army of the Kongming Temple is also exhausted. Why are you panicking? Up until now, how many reinforcements have arrived in Li City?" Skysplitter hurriedly replied, 37 reinforcements have already arrived. They are all following orders and lying in ambush around Li City. No traces of them have been exposed. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and ordered, "Pass down the order. Let the 37 reinforcements get ready and be on standby at any time." Skysplitter's eyes immediately brightened, revealing an expectant look. "Long Tian, our reinforcements have been lying in ambush for so long. Can they finally attack? That's great. I believe that the 400,000 reinforcements can't wait any longer." Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, "The defensive formation will be breached within a day at most." Skysplitter's eyes immediately dimmed again. He sighed with a heart full of worry. Even such a powerful and perfect formation can only hold on for so long. The truth was just as Ji Tianqing had expected. The battle between the two sides continued for another 20 hours. When night fell, the Hall Masters took the initiative to use their final trump cards. They manipulated 2 Emperor-level divine weapons and used their most powerful killing moves. The 4 Hall Masters did the same. They all used their trump cards and manipulated their Emperor-level divine weapons to release their most powerful divine powers. More than 3,000 elite divine kings, under the orders and calls of the Hall Masters, launched the final fierce attack without regard for anything else. Everyone in the Kongming Temple exploded with their strongest power at this moment and used their final trump cards. At this moment, thousands of divine skill light shadows, carrying with them the power to destroy everything, blasted towards the defensive formation. The Emperor-level divine weapons of the 5 Hall Masters were like the bright moon hanging in the sky or the scorching sun falling from the sky, illuminating a radius of 100,000 miles. The most terrifying divine power of heaven and earth, the most magnificent and vast power of the way of the heavens, with the power to destroy everything, blasted violently against the golden light barrier within a radius of 10,000 miles. Kaboom! Boom boom boom! At this moment, a loud noise shook the heavens and the vast earth. The extremely sturdy golden light barrier could not withstand such a ferocious attack. Dozens of wide cracks instantly appeared on it. Immediately after, endless divine skill light shadows blasted around those cracks, tearing them apart and expanding them into gaps. Along with the sound of cracking and shattering, the entire golden barrier of light shattered into pieces, and millions upon millions of fragments of divine light burst out. Seeing that everyone's combined attack had finally breached the defensive formation of Li City, the 3,000 elite divine kings cheered excitedly. The few palace masters also showed a relieved expression, and a smile appeared on their faces. After so many days of continuous attacks, they had finally exhausted the strength of the beast tribe, causing the defensive formation's power to drop significantly. If not for the preparation they had made over the past few days, their combined attack would not have been able to breach the defensive formation. No matter what, Li City's third defensive formation had been breached. At this moment, Li City was already a defenseless city. Despicable, lowly beast tribe, come and suffer the wrath and slaughter of the Kongming Temple. It was not just the Hall Masters. The 3,000 elite divine kings also had such thoughts in their minds. Many divine kings even brandished their sabers and Kenshin soldiers, roaring with murderous intent. At this moment, there was no need for the Hall Masters to motivate them. The morale of the 3,000 elite divine kings had reached a peak. Chapter 45-64. In the instant that the defensive formation was breached, the 20,000 beasts were all given a fright. At the same time, there were also thousands of beasts that were injured or had their divine bodies explode on the spot. Amidst the earth-shattering explosions, the cries of shock and anguish of many beasts could be heard. Fortunately, Lai Tian and Yen Li were already mentally prepared. The two of them released vast amounts of divine power and unleashed mystic techniques to protect the many beasts to prevent the number of casualties from increasing. At the same time, the two of them also used mystic techniques to issue orders for the 37 reinforcements to immediately attack. Ji Tianqing had previously instructed that when the third defensive formation was breached, it would be the time for all reinforcements to attack. The two of them had been waiting for this moment for a long time. On the other side, the leaders of the 37 reinforcements were also wild with joy after receiving the order and couldn't help but let out long howls. Although they arrived at Li City at different times, they all suppressed their killing intent and waited in ambush around Li City after they arrived. Their hearts were already filled with killing intent and they couldn't wait to attack. For this moment, for this order, they had endured and waited for a long time. Charge! It's finally our turn to fight. Charge! Kill all those bastards from the Kongming Temple. At the same time, countless shouts rang out from all directions of Li City. The leaders of the 37 reinforcements all roared angrily and shouted loudly. They led their subordinates of the beast race to charge towards the Li capital without caring about anything else. 400,000 beasts charged at the same time, immediately causing the earth to tremble violently as countless cracks opened up and dust flew into the air. The sky also darkened as dark clouds filled the sky, filling the air with an extremely austere atmosphere. At the same time, the divine light fragments that blotted out the sky around Li City finally dissipated. The earth-shattering explosions gradually disappeared as the four armies of the Kongming Temple finally saw the scene in Li City. Everyone thought that the three barriers of Li City had been breached and that it was completely defenseless. Next, they only needed to advance, besiege, and slaughter the beasts to quickly destroy Li City. However, the scene before their eyes left all of the soldiers dumbfounded. They saw that the Li City with a radius of 10,000 kilometers was still enveloped by a five-colored barrier. The five-colored light barrier was still in operation, releasing divine power fluctuations that were no weaker than the third defensive formation. Without a doubt, that was the fourth defensive formation of Li City. The 3,000 or so elite divine monarchs were all stunned as their expressions became extremely interesting. This is too disgusting. Despicable beasts are simply too despicable. How could this be? Didn't we say that there were only 3 defensive formations? In order to break through the third defensive formation, we've expended so much divine power. Now, a fourth formation has appeared. How are we going to survive? Ha ha ha. In any case, we don't have the energy to attack the fourth defensive formation. How are we going to break through this formation? Let's recuperate for 10 days. Countless elite god kings were grumbling, discussing, and cursing. The morale that had just been raised instantly vanished like smoke into thin air. Everyone had become dispirited and they were even the idea of retreat. Such an outcome was also beyond the expectations of the several hall masters. The 4 hall masters were filled with vexation and their hatred for the beasts, and Ji Tianqing also reached the extreme. In their view, this must be Ji Tianqing's masterpiece. It was simply too despicable. They all secretly swore that if they were allowed to breach Li City, they would definitely capture Ji Tianqing and cruelly torture him for several hundred years before they could vent their hatred. It was just a pity that there was the fourth defensive formation blocking them. They could only think about this idea. Helpless, the 4 hall masters could only send a message to the head hall master and ask him what they should do. The head hall master was also filled with rage, both helpless and vexed. This outcome was also something that he did not expect. Previously, he always thought that there were only 3 defensive formations in Li City. When he was desperately attacking the third defensive formation, he did not think too much and did not have time to execute divine abilities and mystic arts to observe whether there were more defensive formations inside through that formation. And now, he and the 3,000 or so elite divine monarchs were caught in an awkward dilemma. Continuing to attack was clearly impossible. The 3,000 or so elite divine monarchs under his command had already expended all their divine power and were completely exhausted. Ordering them to continue attacking at this time, everyone would have complaints and conflicting emotions in their hearts. It was absolutely impossible for them to risk their lives and attack. Even if those elite divine monarchs continued to attack due to the majesty of the several hall masters, they would not be able to unleash much combat power. Wanting to breach the fourth defensive formation was also an impossible task. Hence, the head hall master could only issue the order to have all the soldiers retreat to a safe area to recuperate and adjust their breathing. No matter what, they had to let the soldiers rest for a few days and recover their strength before they could continue the battle. The head hall master was not worried that the beasts would take advantage of the situation to counterattack. Since the soldiers under his command were all depleted of strength, then the beast's situation would not be much better either. Pass down the order, immediately retreat 200,000 miles and find a place to recuperate and adjust. The head hall master finally made a decision and issued the order to the 4 hall masters. After the 4 hall masters received the order, although they were unwilling, they could only convey the order truthfully. Rather, after the 4 armies heard this order, they all revealed expressions of relief and lined up to retreat. However, just as the 4 armies were retreating dejectedly, earth-shattering battle cries and extremely powerful divine power vibrations came from the sky behind them. Kill. Charge. Don't let those bastards escape. Don't let a single one of them go. Leave no one alive. Those were the roars and shouts of countless beasts. Sensing that something was amiss, the 4 armies all stopped and turned around to look behind them. They also released their divine senses to check the situation. Then, the elite divine monarchs saw a scene that they would never forget for the rest of their lives. They saw that the sky was covered by dazzling 5-colored divine light. There were at least tens of thousands of huge figures enveloped in dazzling divine light that charged over at lightning speed. Every ray of light was wrapped around the figure of a beast tribe member. An endless number of beasts surged forth like a tidal wave. It was a huge encirclement that covered tens of thousands of miles and was rapidly shrinking. This scene gave the 3,000 elite divine monarchs a shock. Everyone was caught off guard, and their expressions changed drastically as they revealed looks of fear. Where did so many beasts come from? Oh no! Those are the beasts' reinforcements. How can there be so many? A rough estimate would say that there are more than 100,000 of them. It's over. We must have surrounded Li City for too long and failed to take it down, giving them a chance to call for reinforcements. Chapter 45-65. There were simply too many beast reinforcements. Their figures filled every corner of Li City, blotting out the sky and covering the earth like a tidal wave. The Kongming Temple's 4 armies were not mentally prepared, so the sudden attack of hundreds of thousands of beasts naturally gave them quite a fright. Even the 4 temple masters were momentarily stunned. They could not think of a good countermeasure and hurriedly reported the situation to the first temple master. In fact, the first temple master had discovered the beast reinforcements earlier than them and had also observed their numbers. There were as many as 400,000 beasts. From that moment on, the first temple master's expression became somewhat unsightly, and his eyes were extremely grave. When the 4 temple masters sent him a message asking for a countermeasure, only 2 breaths had passed. In these 2 breaths, the first temple master had already thought through the cause and effect and made a decisive decision. The hundreds of thousands of beast reinforcements seemed frightening, but in reality, their average strength was not very strong. Even if the Kongming Temple's 4 armies were surrounded and there was no way they could defeat the hundreds of thousands of beast reinforcements, it was not as if they had no chance of escaping. Thus, the first temple master decisively ordered the 4 armies to immediately gather their forces and break out of the encirclement. No matter what, no matter the price, the 4 armies had to break out of the encirclement. Right now, the Kongming Temple's goal was not to break into Li City, nor was it to capture the young flood god emperor, nor was it to slaughter the beasts of Li City. Instead, it was to preserve as much of their strength as possible. After the 4 temple masters received the order, they did not hesitate and immediately led their soldiers to break out of the encirclement with all their might. This was something that had to be done. The four armies did not have any thoughts of resistance. They all followed the four temple masters' orders and arranged themselves into a sharp knife formation to break out of the encirclement as quickly as possible. Everyone was well aware that the hundreds of thousands of beast reinforcements were enough to overwhelm them and annihilate them. And they had no way out. Behind them was Li City's defensive formation. Once the battle began, the beast army within Li City would definitely charge out to join the battle and attack them from both inside and outside. At that time, the 3,000 elite god kings would really be powerless to reverse the situation. They would be dead for sure. The four temple masters did not need to boost morale. The elite god kings had to do their best to save their lives. Shwa! As the dazzling divine light flashed, the two sides rapidly approached each other in the sky, and then fiercely collided. Boom! Ping ping ping! As soon as they met, both sides released their most powerful divine abilities and lost skills, launching a fierce collision. Every palace master led an army of between 800 to 900 people. As for the reinforcements that surrounded them, there were as many as 70 to 80,000 beasts. This was despite the fact that the difference in numbers between the two sides was around 90 times. However, in the first round of battle, the four armies of the Kongming Temple did not fall into a disadvantageous position. Instead, they gained the upper hand. Led by the four hall masters, they were at the very top of the sword formation and were also the first to cut into the beast race's reinforcements. With their God-Emperor stage powers, they unleashed peerlessly powerful divine abilities and killed several dozen beasts in a single exchange. At the same time, they blocked most of the attacks from the beastmen's reinforcements for their soldiers. Many elite divine kings followed closely behind. They followed the four hall masters and charged forward. The effect was very obvious. After 2 breaths of time, the first round of battle ended. At this moment, the four armies of the Kongming Temple had advanced by several dozen kilometers. The total number of casualties was only slightly more than 20 people. On the other hand, the beast race reinforcements formation had been torn apart. The number of casualties was also close to 2,000. The difference in numbers between the two sides was close to 100 times, but the number of casualties was also close to 100 times. This was simply too shocking. At the same time, this also directly proved how powerful the Kongming Temple was. However, the advantage that the Kongming Temple had was quickly exhausted. When the four armies cut into the beast race reinforcements formation, they were completely surrounded by the beast race reinforcements. It was as if they had sunk into a swamp. Even though the four hall masters were powerful and could kill many beasts, almost no one could get close to them. However, the elite divine kings under their command were weak and their fighting strength had greatly decreased. They were like arrows at the end of their flight. On average, each divine king of the Kongming Temple was surrounded by dozens to hundreds of beasts. No matter how powerful they were, under the siege of countless beast race reinforcements, they were unable to display their abilities, let alone have much effect. Therefore, in the sky around Li City, the situation on the battlefield immediately changed. Everyone could clearly see that the four armies had plunged headfirst into the sea of beasts. At first, they had charged very quickly and violently for more than 100 kilometers. However, soon after, the four armies were surrounded by hundreds of thousands of beast race reinforcements. They were like ships submerged by raging waves, bobbing up and down in the huge waves. The speed of the four armies' advance slowed down again and again until they had sunk into a swamp. They began to struggle and wriggle slowly. Even though the beast race reinforcements' casualties were still increasing, the resistance of the four armies was getting weaker and weaker. Casualties also began to appear and gradually increased. This was the result that everyone had expected. When two armies fought, it was as the saying went, the first drum of energy, the second would weaken, and the third would be exhausted. When the momentum of the four armies was exhausted and the four hall masters were surrounded and unable to escape, the four armies would begin to lose. The Hall Masters were also mentally prepared. They did not hope to be able to lead their soldiers to retreat unscathed. They only hoped to preserve as much of their strength as possible. Simply put, they wanted to preserve as much of their lives as possible. Just as the two sides were engaged in a chaotic battle, a huge door suddenly opened in the defensive formation that enveloped Li City. From the dazzling door of light, a handsome black-haired youth in white robes flew out first. He stepped across the sky with a cold expression. He held a divine sword that was as black as ink in his right hand and headed straight for the battlefield in the north. There, 120,000 beast race reinforcements were besieging the first Hall Master, second Hall Master, and more than 800 elite god kings. Both sides were engaged in an earth-shattering battle as divine light flashed. Immediately after, two tall figures flew out from the five-colored door of light of the defensive formation. They were Lai Tian and Yen Li. Both of them had cold expressions and their bodies were filled with killing intent that soared into the sky. In order to wait for this day, they had suffered and endured for far too long. At this moment, the anger, hatred, and killing intent that had been accumulating in their hearts for a long time could finally be released. When Lai Tian and Yen Li flew across the sky, more than 5,000 beast race god kings flew out from the five-colored door of light. These 5,000 beast race god kings were selected by Lai Tian and Yen Li from the tens of thousands of beast race troops. Although they had participated in the battle to protect Li City and expended a large amount of divine power, they were still in good condition. However, they were in relatively good condition, and their strength was preserved better. They still had the strength to fight. These 5,000 beast race god kings followed Lai Tian and Yen Li closely and headed straight for the battlefield in the north. Chapter 45-66. They saw Ji Tianqing leading Lai Tian, Yen Li, and more than 5,000 beast tribe godly kings toward the battlefield with murderous intent. Tens of thousands of miles away, the first Hall Master and second Hall Master's expressions changed as they frowned. What I was most worried about has finally happened. The first Hall Master turned to look at Ji Tianqing and more than 5,000 beast tribe godly kings and sighed with a gloomy expression. A trace of helplessness flashed across the second Hall Master's eyes as he smiled bitterly. We can only blame ourselves for dragging it out for too long, resulting in such a situation. This was their plan from the start. They were waiting for this moment. How could they not attack? The first Hall Master naturally understood this as well. He nodded and said, "Forget it. The only thing we can do now is to fight with all our might. How many people we can bring back alive will be up to the heavens." Even in such a dangerous situation, the first Hall Master was not worried about his own safety. As long as he did not want to die, Ji Tianqing and the beast tribe experts would not be able to kill him. Similarly, the other four Hall Masters were the same. They are obviously coming for the two of us. The second Hall Master gripped the divine weapon in his hand tightly as he shouted with a fierce expression, "We must stop them. We must not let them slaughter our elites." Then, the second Hall Master waved his divine weapon and released an Emperor-level divine ability killer move as he took the initiative to attack Ji Tianqing. The first Hall Master did not care about the surrounding beast tribe reinforcements. His figure flashed and teleported 30,000 miles away, blocking Lai Tian and Yen Li as he brazenly attacked. Bam! Boom! In the next moment, the divine abilities released by the second Hall Master and Ji Tianqing collided violently. Lai Tian and Yen Li joined forces and used the beast tribe's divine ability to fight the first Hall Master. In the deafening explosion, the divine abilities of the two sides collided and exploded into fragments of divine light that filled the sky, creating a terrifying hurricane. The destructive shock wave spread out in all directions. Not only did it sweep through the ruins, but it also injured many beast tribe reinforcements. Especially those divine Lord Realm beasts. After being swept up by the shock waves, they either died or were injured. The scene was extremely tragic. On the other hand, the elite godly kings of the Kongming Temple were, firstly, few in number and secondly, stronger in strength. They were not affected too much. For the Kongming Temple, this was of course an advantage. The first palace master and second palace master also let go of their restraints. They no longer held back and attacked with all their might. However, Ji Tianqing was not afraid of the second palace master at all when he used his full strength. He was already able to fight the second palace master to a draw. The first palace master's strength was higher than Lai Tian and Yan Li's, but he was fighting 1 against 2. Moreover, Lai Tian and Yan Li cooperated very well, so the first palace master couldn't gain the upper hand. Just like that, the first hall master and second hall master were held back. They were unable to take care of and protect the 800 elite god kings. Taking advantage of this opportunity, more than 5,000 elite god kings of the beast race charged forward silently, surrounding and annihilating the 800 or so Kongming Temple god kings. Ah! Kill! Charge out! The battlefield quickly expanded to a radius of 70 to 80,000 miles. This area was completely filled with the light of divine arts. It was chaos. All kinds of divine arts collided and exploded. Deafening battle cries and painful screams rang out one after another. What a lively and tragic battle! Throughout the history of the planet of origin, ever since the Kongming Temple was built, this was definitely the largest battle in history with the largest number of participants. Regardless of the outcome of this battle, it would definitely be recorded in the annals of history and remembered by future generations. Time passed quietly. Even though the 400,000 beast race troops and the 3,000 god kings of the Kongming Temple had no time to calculate the time, 6 hours passed. The first palace master and second palace master were still held back by Ji Tianqing, Lai Tian, and Yan Li. They were unable to extricate themselves. Of course, the 5-god emperor had also moved the battlefield to 200,000 miles away in the sky. 80% of the 800 elite god kings under the first palace master and second palace master had been slaughtered. The remaining 100 or so god kings were also covered in blood and wounds. They were still holding on bitterly. They were surrounded by tens of thousands of beast race experts and could not hold on for long. In at most 2 hours, they would all be slaughtered. It was worth mentioning that the 400,000 beast race troops were only left with 300,000 or so. In the past 6 hours, at least 100,000 beast race experts and experts had died tragically in this battle. 1/3 of the beast race experts and experts were killed by the 5 palace masters of the Kongming Temple. After all, they were the supreme god emperor. They had absolute dominance and power on the battlefield. Broken limbs were everywhere in the ruins. The desolate soil and gravel had long been dyed red by the beast race's blood. Even the air was filled with a scarlet blood mist. As for the encirclement formed by the beast race reinforcements, it had expanded from 30,000 miles to 100,000 miles at the start of the battle. It could not be helped. It was not that the beast race army wanted to expand the encirclement. Instead, it was because the 4 armies of the Kongming Temple were attacking them from all directions. The 3rd palace master was not injured. However, he had used up too much of his divine power. His abilities were declining. Of the 900 elite god kings under his command, 400 had died in battle. 200 were severely injured. However, there were 100 lucky ones who seized the opportunity to escape from the beast race's encirclement. They disappeared into the horizon and escaped into the forest. The 3rd palace master was still holding on bitterly to protect the god kings under his command. He was confident that he could lead 200 elite god kings out of the beast race's encirclement. On the other side, the 4th palace master was also safe and sound. However, he had used up a lot of his divine power. He was mentally exhausted and his face was pale. Out of the 800 elite god kings under his command, 500 had died in battle. They had turned into dust and dregs and were scattered in the ruins. Out of the 300 elite god kings who survived, only 50 of them had found the opportunity to escape from the beast race's encirclement. The remaining 200 or so people crowded closely around the fourth palace master. Even though they were severely injured and extremely weak, they could still hold on for a while with the fourth palace master's protection. As for whether the fourth palace master could lead them out of Li City alive, no one knew. On the other side of the battlefield, the fifth palace master's robe was stained with blood. He was in a sorry state. Out of the few palace masters, he was the weakest. In the previous 6 hours of battle, not only had he used up too much of his divine power, he had also suffered some light injuries. As for the 800 elite god kings under his command, 500 of them had been killed. Only 200 of them were left alive. However, they were like arrows at the end of their flight and were on the verge of death. Only 20 of them were lucky enough to find an opportunity to escape. The remaining 200 people were in a terrible state. The fifth palace master no longer had the confidence to lead them out of the beast race's encirclement. Chapter 45-67. Life and death, success and failure, often changed in an instant. Not long ago, the Kongming Temple had the upper hand and attacked the defensive formation of Li City. They swore to destroy Li City and kill all the people of the Beast Clan. However, at this moment, over 3,000 elite god kings from the Divine Hall of Space had been slaughtered. There were countless casualties. Such a huge change was not expected by anyone from the Kongming Temple. However, everything that seemed to happen by chance was actually inevitable. Therefore, it was reasonable for the 4 armies of the Kongming Temple to be surrounded and attacked by 400,000 Beast Clan soldiers. This great battle finally came to an end after 10 hours. Out of the 400,000 Beast Clan soldiers, only 250,000 survived. The other 150,000 died in the battle. Even the 5,000 elite divine kings that Lai Tian and Yen Li brought along lost over 1,000 of them. Only 3,600 survived. Regardless of the outcome of the battle, the Beast Clan's sacrifice was huge and shocking. After this battle, the Beast Clan would need to recuperate for at least a few hundred years to recover. If the Kongming Temple's loss was not huge enough, the Kongming Temple would not have given the Beast Clan a few hundred years to recover. Fortunately, the Kongming Temple's loss was huge. Out of the 3,000 elite divine kings, only 500 of them survived. Under the lead of the 4 temple masters, they escaped and left Li City. The remaining 3,200 elite divine kings died tragically in this battle. They were turned into powder and ashes. The 4 temple masters who escaped successfully were of course led by the Grand Temple Master. He had the power of the upper level of the God Emperor. He had all kinds of remarkable powers and techniques. Even if Ji Tianqing, Lai Tian, and Yen Li attacked together, they could not do anything to him. Apart from that, the Second Temple Master, Third Temple Master, and Fourth Temple Master also escaped successfully after paying a certain price. Even though their injuries were serious, it did not affect their ability to continue fighting. The unluckiest one was, of course, the Fifth Temple Master. He was the God Emperor, but he was the weakest among the 5 palace masters. In the beginning, he was only able to hold on against the Beastmen reinforcements and the soldiers under his command. However, in the last 2 hours of the battle, Ji Tianqing suddenly changed his strategy. At that time, the Beastmen's reinforcements had suffered heavy casualties, and the Kongming Temple's army had also suffered heavy casualties. Ji Tianqing vowed to weaken the Kongming Temple's strength and find a way to get rid of a temple master. Therefore, he set his sights on the weakest 5th Hall Master. He ordered the 3,000 elite beast race god kings to attack the 5th Hall Master at all costs. Even if the 5th Hall Master was an expert of the God Emperor and possessed many divine abilities and methods, he was still unable to defeat the 5th Hall Master. But in the end, he was still lacking in strength, and it was difficult for 2 fists to fight against 4 feet. After an hour of fighting, he was finally seriously injured. At that moment, Ji Tianqing suddenly abandoned the eldest temple master and teleported to the battlefield tens of thousands of miles away to launch a sneak attack on the fifth hall master. The fifth hall master was busy dealing with the beast race god kings, and he did not expect Ji Tianqing, who had been fighting with the eldest temple master, to suddenly appear in front of him. When Ji Tianqing unleashed his divine ability and secret technique, the fifth palace master was stunned for a moment. He found it hard to believe. Even though the fifth hall master reacted and dodged at the most critical moment, he was still too slow. But he was still one step too slow. Kaboom! Amidst the deafening explosion, the blinding light of the divine sword struck the fifth hall master hard. Instantly, the fifth hall master was hit until blood spurted out. He let out a painful groan and flew dozens of miles away. Only a god emperor like Ji Tianqing could injure and severely injure the fifth hall master. When the fifth hall master flew out of the ruins, he was already covered in blood, and his hair was disheveled. He was in a sorry state. After succeeding in one move, Ji Tianqing did not give the fifth hall master any time to catch his breath. He teleported again and started to pursue him. Sword of Daytime. Sword breaking 9 heavens. Sword of Apocalypse. Ji Tianqing took turns to use all kinds of divine abilities and ultimate skills, blasting them all at once toward the fifth hall master. Even though the fifth hall master had an emperor-level divine weapon to protect himself, he was still flustered and exhausted from the attacks. He kept retreating in defeat. After 5 moves, the fifth hall master was pushed back 30,000 miles. His robe was soaked in blood, and his injuries were even more severe. Ji Tianqing used his last secret skill to attack him indiscriminately. The fifth hall master's strength was quickly depleted, and he became weaker and weaker. In the end, he could no longer resist Ji Tianqing's fierce attacks. He could only rely on his instinct to control the emperor-level divine weapon to protect himself. Another 30 breaths had passed. Ji Tianqing attacked a few more times, and finally, the fifth hall master's divine body collapsed, exploding into a bloody mist that filled the sky. In order to prevent the fifth hall master from using any secret skill, he could use the divine power of heaven and earth and the power of heaven way to quickly retrieve the bloody mist and reform his divine body. Ji Tianqing manipulated the divine power of heaven and earth and used a Taoist rhyme to burn the bloody mist into nothingness. In this way, the fifth hall master's divine body was completely destroyed, and there was no possibility of recovery. He only had one godhood left. If he wanted to reform his divine body, he would have to spend a lot of time and effort. While Ji Tianqing was using his secret skill to destroy the bloody mist, the fifth hall master's godhood fled decisively. He was terrified and panicked. His unparalleled desire to survive caused him to unleash his powerful potential. With the help of the divine power of heaven and earth, the fifth hall master's godhood leaped tens of thousands of miles and fled toward the west. Ji Tianqing, of course, had to give chase, and he could catch up in a few breaths' time. However, the fifth hall master fled in the same direction as the first hall master and second hall master. It was obvious that the fifth palace master was going after the 2 palace masters. He knew that he only had one godhood left, and there was no way he could escape Ji Tianqing's pursuit. He could only escape with the help of the 2 hall masters. As expected. When Ji Tianqing was about to catch up with the fifth hall master finally escaped to the vicinity of the first hall master and second hall master. When the 2 hall masters saw that the fifth hall master's divine body had been destroyed, and that his remaining godhood was severely injured, they were inexplicably shocked. Even though they were mentally prepared and knew that Ji Tianqing was very powerful, they still could not believe it. They still could not believe that Ji Tianqing could destroy the fifth hall master's divine body in such a short time. It was simply too terrifying. The 2 hall masters were stunned. Without hesitation, they used all their strength to stop Ji Tianqing and protect the fifth hall master. Bang! Bang! Boom! 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 Ji Tianqing rushed over with a murderous aura, but he was intercepted by the two hall masters. Both sides waved their swords and the Kenshin soldiers collided fiercely. A deafening explosion erupted. Energy overflowed and divine light danced wildly. Ji Tianqing was sent flying by the impact. His charging momentum was stopped on the spot. The first hall master and second hall master also panted a few times. They stopped tangling with Ji Tianqing and covered the retreat of their soldiers and the fifth hall master. Chapter 45-68. Even though Ji Tianqing was unwilling to give up and chased after the fifth hallmaster's divinity for 300,000 miles and swore to kill him, the first hallmaster and second hallmaster tried their best to stop him. Ji Tianqing could only give up regretfully. The battle that lasted for half a month ended just like that. Li City was successfully saved. 50,000 beasts were safe and sound. Only 4,000 beasts that participated in the battle died in battle. Furthermore, the beasts that sacrificed the most were the reinforcements. A total of 150,000 beasts died in battle. Another 100,000 beasts were severely injured and would not be able to recover in a short period of time. As for the Kongming Temple, they also suffered heavy casualties and returned in defeat. When they came, 4,000 elite divine kings came. They were aggressive, murderous, and full of ambition. In the end, only the 5 palace masters managed to escape with more than 600 defeated soldiers. They were battered and exhausted. More than 3,300 elite divine kings were forever left in Li City, turned into ashes and dust. Even the 600 elite god kings who managed to escape were extremely heavily injured. At most, they would need to enter seclusion for a few hundred years, and at least 100 years to recover their strength. These people were the elite experts of the Kongming Temple. They were the backbone of the various hallmasters and the main force of the temple. Moreover, one of the hallmasters was severely injured and even his body was destroyed. Suffering such heavy injuries was definitely a huge blow to the Kongming Temple. The Kongming Temple's power was also greatly weakened because of this. It would take at least 1,000 years for them to recover. Before this, the Kongming Temple had an absolute advantage. They could completely suppress the beasts and make them cower in fear. They could only secretly develop their power and strive to rule. However, from this battle onwards, history was rewritten. The power structure between the Kongming Temple and the beasts also changed. Although this battle was not enough for the beasts to completely overtake the Kongming Temple and gain the upper hand, it was impossible for them to suddenly surpass the Kongming Temple. However, in the next few hundred years, the Kongming Temple would no longer have the strength to deal with the beasts. Even suppressing the beasts' development would be difficult. This battle allowed the Kongming Temple to see the beast race's determination to resist. It also allowed them to see Lai Tian and Yen Li's ambitions. It also made them realize that the beast race was not as ignorant as they had thought. As the old saying goes, once bitten, twice shy. After this crushing defeat, the Kongming Temple would definitely leave behind painful memories and lessons. In the future, if any temple master wanted to make a move against the Beast Clan, they would definitely be opposed. They would definitely have to think it through carefully. After Ji Tianqing gave up on killing the fifth hall master, he decisively changed his target and went after the scattered Kongming Temple elites. An hour later, he killed more than 30 elite deity kings of the Kongming Temple before returning to Li City to recuperate. As for the 200,000 beast race reinforcements, they also madly chased for 4 hours. They surrounded more than 100 elite deity kings of the Kongming Temple before returning to Li City. At this time, the people of the Kongming Temple had already escaped far away. The 4 temple masters had summoned their divine warships and carried the defeated soldiers away. The beast race reinforcements did not have any warships. With their strength, they could not catch up to the Kongming Temple's divine warships. They could only retreat to Li City. The battle was completely over. Lai Tianlai and Yen Li were also exhausted and weak. However, they could not rest yet. They still had to deal with the aftermath. Under their arrangements, more than 10,000 beast race citizens flew out of Li City to clean up the battlefield. 20,000 beast race citizens were busy saving the dying and healing the injured. The entire Li City was busy, but every beast race citizen's face was brimming with excitement and smiles. Even the warriors who were heavily injured had forgotten their pain. They were still emotional as they excitedly recounted the scene of them bravely killing the enemy. When they talked about how the elite deity kings of the Kongming temple fled pathetically and how they were scared out of their wits, they would even laugh loudly and dance with excitement. In the end, because they were too excited, their movements were too big and they tore open their wounds. Thus, a strange scene that could only be seen in the beast race appeared. The beast race warriors, who were riddled with wounds and covered in blood, laughed loudly as blood spurted from their bodies. Even though they grimaced in pain and let out waves of blood-curdling screams, they could not contain their excitement. Just like that, an entire night passed. This night, the entire Li City was brightly lit. Nearly 300,000 beast race reinforcements and citizens filled Li City to the brim. Majestic and burly figures could be seen everywhere. Some of them were gathered in groups of 3 to 5. They endured their injuries as they chatted and laughed loudly. Some of them were brutish men with wounds all over their bodies. Even if they were missing an arm or a leg, they would still gather together and drink to their heart's content. In any case, the beast race reinforcements were not in a hurry to heal their wounds. Instead, they were all using their own methods to express the excitement in their hearts. It could not be helped. This victory was truly an unprecedented first in history. It was too much of a shock to the beast race. In the past, the beast race was weak and could only be bullied by the Kongming temple. They had no power to fight back and were treated as prey. They did not have the ability to fight back against the Kongming temple. Over time, the Kongming temple began to think that the beast race was weak and ignorant. Even all the beast race thought the same. This notion had already been deeply ingrained into the hearts of the beast race. However, the success of this battle had overturned everyone's notions. It was not just the elite deity kings and temple masters of the Kongming temple. Even all the beast race citizens could not believe this fact. The people of the Kongming temple could not believe or accept that they had actually lost to the ignorant beast race. The beast race citizens could not believe it either. After being bullied for so many years, they were actually able to achieve victory in their first direct confrontation with the Kongming temple. They had completely defeated the Kongming temple and had to retreat in defeat. How could they not be excited by such a shocking matter? When the beast men gathered together, the one they talked about the most was Ji Tianqing. After everyone's discussion, they unanimously agreed that the main reason why the beast race was able to defeat the beast race was because of Ji Tianqing. If it was not for Ji Tianqing's help and guidance, Li City would have been conquered long ago. They would not have been able to hold on until the reinforcements arrived. The 50,000 beast race citizens would have all been killed. As such, Ji Tianqing's position in the hearts of the beast race citizens rose to an extremely high position. Everyone worshipped and was extremely grateful to him. If Lai Tian and Yen Li did not dissuade them, the 300,000 beast race citizens and the reinforcements would have to party for a few more days before their emotions could calm down. On the third day, Lai Tian and Yen Li realized that the citizens were too excited and were completely unwilling to rest and recuperate. They could only issue orders and force everyone to rest and recuperate. As such, Li City finally quieted down. Many of the injured went into seclusion in an orderly manner to recuperate. Lai Tian and Yen Li arranged many follow-up matters before they heaved a sigh of relief. They hurriedly went to report the results to Ji Tianqing. Chapter 45-69. After the battle ended, Ji Tianqing returned to Li City and entered his residence to adjust his breathing. He didn't need to worry about the follow-up matters. Lai Tian and Yen Li would arrange it properly. In the previous battle, although he didn't fight many times and didn't last long. But there was no doubt that he definitely put in the most effort and took the greatest credit. The 4 defensive arrays that enveloped Li City were all personally arranged by him. In the final battle, he was also the corps that blocked the 1st Palace Master and 2nd Palace Master and seriously injured the 5th Palace Master. In order to win, he paid the most effort and strength. After the battle, he also entered a rather weak state. His strength had declined too much, so he could only recuperate and recover. When Lai Tian and Yen Li saw him, it was in the secret chamber of his residence. Ji Tianqing didn't ask too much. He just listened to Lai Tian's report and knew the exact number of casualties on both sides, so he didn't ask anymore. Lai Tian also asked him if he had any plans or orders for the next battle. He waved his hand and said to Lai Tian, after this battle, the Kongming Temple's vitality has been greatly damaged, and their strength has been greatly weakened. They will need to recuperate for at least hundreds of years before they dare to think of revenge. And such a long time is enough for the Beast Clan to recuperate, set up a defense line, and monitor the movements of the Kongming Temple. Do you understand what this emperor means? Lai Tian quickly nodded and asked, you mean to order the soldiers who participated in the battle to recuperate and recover their strength as soon as possible. In addition, we still can't relax our vigilance. We have to set up a defense line at the border and monitor the movements of the Kongming Temple at all times to prevent their revenge. That's right. Ji Tianqing nodded and continued, in the next 1 or 2 years, this emperor will be in seclusion to recuperate and recover my vitality. The divine abilities and secret techniques that I taught you before are enough for you to comprehend and cultivate for many years. Once you've mastered the art of setting up formations, you can try setting up some formations around Li City. Just treat it as practice. As for Yen Li, after you have learned several refining techniques, you can try to refine divine tools and explore and comprehend on your own. Both Lai Tian and Yen Li could see that Ji Tianqing was very weak. Although he seemed to have only suffered light injuries, his mind was exhausted and his strength was empty. This was not something that could be recovered in a short period of time. Lai Tian and Yen Li understood Ji Tianqing's good intentions. They nodded and said yes, indicating that they would do as he said. Before the final battle, Yen Li was still a little worried. She was afraid that Ji Tianqing's prestige in the beast race was too high and that some uncontrollable situations would arise in the future. However, after the decisive battle earlier, Yen Li completely dispelled those thoughts. Now, it was more respectful than wary of Ji Tianqing. Seeing that Ji Tianqing had finished giving out his orders, he had also made arrangements for the beast race's tasks for the next 2 years. Skysplit and Yen Li were just about to bid farewell and leave when Ji Tianqing suddenly raised his hand and called out to them. Did you forget that there's still one more thing that you haven't told me? Lai Tian and Yen Li frowned, looking at each other with doubtful faces. What's the matter? Long Tian, we can't guess it. Why don't you remind us? Ji Tianqing frowned as if he wasn't happy. He only reminded them with a few words. The thing that I want. Lai Tian and Yen Li instantly understood his meaning and hurriedly explained, Long Tian, don't worry. This is our agreement. How could we forget it? Don't worry, the people of my clan, as well as the lords of the various territories, have been trying their best to gather resources for refining artifacts. This time, they were delayed by the war. Now that the war is over, I will continue to urge them to search. Seeing that Ji Tianqing was silent and seemed to think that they were being perfunctory, Lai Tian and Yen Li were a little embarrassed. Lai Tian hesitated for a moment before he finally patted his chest and said, Long Tian, I can guarantee you that when you're done with your secluded cultivation, I'll definitely hand over several emperor-grade refining materials to you. We won't go back on our promises to you. Well, you can go do your work. Getting such a reply, Ji Tianqing nodded and waved his hand to send Lai Tian and Yen Li away. Then, Li City quieted down completely. Everyone calmed down and healed their wounds. Sky Lai and Yen Li followed Ji Tianqing's instructions and issued a series of orders step by step. After dealing with these things, they calmed down and went into seclusion to heal their wounds. Li City resumed its tranquility. The 300,000 people were in seclusion to heal their wounds. The 100,000 reinforcements who hadn't arrived at Li City received the news of the victory and returned to their territories. The news of the victory spread from Li City to the unknown lands and quickly reached the major territories. It was known by millions of beast tribes. Almost all the beast tribes couldn't believe that this news was true. They couldn't believe that the beast tribes had been weak for so many years. They had been bullied and hunted down by the Kongming Temple. Unexpectedly, there was a day when they could turn the tables and win. Such shocking news made all the beast tribes boil with excitement. They cheered and celebrated enthusiastically. They sang praises of Lai Tian and Yen Li and worshipped them. While the beast tribes were discussing the victory of the war, they couldn't avoid mentioning the god emperor of a foreign race. That was Ji Tianqing. After Ji Tianqing entered Li City, he taught the people of the beast race and personally set up the defensive formation. Countless people of the beast race also knew about it. In the midst of the discussion and debate, everyone confirmed the fact. That was, Ji Tianqing had contributed greatly to the victory of this war. His contributions couldn't go unnoticed. So much so that his contributions were even above Lai Tian and Yen Li's. Although, such words and arguments were suspected of being disrespectful to Lai Tian and Yen Li. But the beast tribes were an uneducated race. They didn't know much about etiquette and tactful words. They only knew how to speak frankly and express their true thoughts. Just like that, Ji Tianqing's name spread widely among the beast tribes. He was revered and worshipped by millions of beast tribes. As the news spread more and more, after half a month, 80% of the beast tribes had already treated Ji Tianqing as a leader on par with Lai Tian and Yen Li. Of course, this was all in the future. Now, let's talk about the 4 hall masters of Kongming Temple and the hundreds of defeated soldiers. After escaping hundreds of thousands of miles away from Li City and shaking off the pursuit of Ji Tianqing and the beast tribe's reinforcements, the 4 hall masters decisively took out their divine warships. The 4 divine warships carried more than 500 heavily injured elite divine kings. They flew across the sky in a panic and sped at an unknown location at high speed. The 5th hall master's injuries were too severe. His godhead had fallen into a coma and he was unconscious. The 1st hall master kept his godhead in a secret room in the divine worship. He used a formation to provide power and slowly nurture it. This was only a temporary measure. It could only prevent the 5th hall master's injuries from worsening. As for the 5th hall master's complete recovery, it wasn't something that could be done in 1 or 200 years. Chapter 45-70. The 1st Hallmaster personally cast a spell and sealed the 5th Hallmaster's divinity in a divine formation in the secret room. After dealing with this matter, he returned to the main hall of the divine worship to check on everyone's condition. There were more than 130 elite divine kings who had entered his divine worship. Only 4 of them were not injured, and a dozen of them had lighter injuries. The other 100 or so people were severely injured. Their robes were stained with blood, and they looked extremely miserable. These elite divine kings were dispirited. Most of them sat in the main hall, their eyes dim and their faces ugly. Some of the more severely injured people could not bear the torture of their injuries. They groaned and groaned in pain. There were also a few people who were severely injured. They did not last long before they fainted and collapsed in the main hall. The 1st Hallmaster's gaze swept across everyone. When he saw how badly injured the soldiers were, and when he thought about how the Kongming Temple had returned in defeat and lost more than 3,000 elites, he gnashed his teeth in anger. He knew better than anyone how important those 3,000 elite divine kings were to the Kongming Temple. The defeat in this battle had caused too much damage to the Kongming Temple. They would not be able to recover without a few hundred years. The first Whole Master became angrier the more he thought about it. The blood in his body churned, and he could not help but spit out blood. However, he could not lose his composure in front of the dead soldiers. He could only suppress his anger and hatred and silently swear in his heart, "Despicable and lowly beast clan, I will remember this. I will let you be arrogant for a few more decades. When the elites under my command recover, I will come back for revenge. When that time comes, I will return the humiliation I suffered today tenfold, no, 100-fold." After pausing for a moment, he thought of something even more infuriating, and added in his heart, "Especially that damned bastard. I will eat his flesh, drink his blood, and sleep on his skin. If I do not torture him for 100 years, how can I vent the hatred in my heart?" The first Whole Master did not reveal the other party's identity. However, Ji Tianqing was the only one who could make him so angry and hate him to such an extent. After a long time, he finally calmed down and said to the more than 100 soldiers in the hall, "Go back to your rooms and cultivate to heal your wounds. Those who can't move will be helped by others." Everyone lowered their heads dejectedly and weakly acknowledged the order in a low voice. They left the hall one after another and entered their respective rooms. Those who had fainted or were unable to move were supported and carried out of the hall by their companions. When the hall became empty, the first palace master turned around and left. He returned to the secret chamber with a gloomy expression and sat down to regulate his breathing. During the battle earlier, even though he hadn't suffered any material injuries, he'd exhausted a large amount of divine energy, and he was at the point of exhaustion. However, at that moment, he received messages from the second palace master, the third palace master, and the fourth palace master. The three hall masters steered their own divine warships and followed closely behind the first hall master's divine warship. Their hearts were also filled with anger and unwillingness. They felt extremely sullen and angry. However, they could do nothing but run away. After comforting the injured soldiers and instructing them to go into seclusion to recuperate, the three hall masters felt indignant and sent a message to the first hall master, asking what they should do next. They couldn't keep running away like this, right? However, after the first hall master received the message, he was also helpless. With regards to the current situation, he really had nothing to say. No matter how angry the three hall masters were, he could only comfort them with a few words. There was nothing he could do. Everything could only wait until they escaped from the unknown lands and returned to the Kongming Temple before they could make further plans. After the three hall masters received the message, they were somewhat depressed. They discussed in private for a while and could only suppress the anger and helplessness in their hearts. They thought of a more important problem. The Beast Clan had won a great victory and their morale was high. Their 4 divine warships were still traveling in the unknown lands and desperately escaping in the direction of the Kongming Temple. The Beast Clan would most likely send out a large number of troops to surround and kill them. However, the 4 of them were powerless and their combat abilities were greatly reduced. The 500 elite divine kings who were lucky enough to escape had almost lost their combat abilities. If they were surrounded, it would be very dangerous and difficult for them to escape unscathed. After discussing, the 3 hall masters decided to raise this concern to the first hall master. After the first hall master received the message, he was both angry and helpless. He could only suppress his anger and reply, "Please use your brains and think carefully. Although our vitality was greatly damaged and we had to return in defeat, didn't the beast race also suffer heavy losses? Apart from the Beast Clan gathered in Li City, who can be called the elites of the Beast Clan? Only that young god emperor and the 2 leaders of the Beast Clan can pose a threat to us. Other than that, what kind of strength do the Beast Clan have in their reinforcements? What right do they have to kill us? What are you worried about?" Is it the failure of this battle that has scared you out of your wits? All of you, calm down and think about it carefully. Leave the unknown lands first. If there is anything, we can discuss it when we return to the temple. The first Hall Master's words were like a wake-up call to the 3 Hall Masters. Just now, they were still in a daze and their thoughts were in a mess. They didn't know what to do. After being reprimanded by the first Hall Master, the 3 Hall Masters quickly calmed down. After thinking carefully, they felt that the first Hall Master's words made sense. They were no longer worried about being killed by the Beast Clan. They also stopped letting their thoughts run wild. They focused on controlling the divine ships and monitoring the surrounding movements. They followed the first Hall Master and fled to the west. Things went as the first Hall Master expected. In the next 10 days, the 4 divine ships passed through half of the unknown lands. They weren't stopped or met with any danger. Perhaps Lai Tian and Yen Li had thought of killing them, but considering the strength of the Beast Clan's people, they could only give up on this idea. In the process of the 4 divine ships fleeing to the west, they encountered many places where ferocious beasts and divine beasts gathered. However, the 4 Hall Masters were personally controlling the divine ships. Their divine ships were Emperor-level divine artifacts. They wouldn't be discovered by those divine beasts at all. Even if there were a few divine king realm divine beasts and ferocious beasts with extraordinary talents, they would notice the fleet's tracks. However, the speed of the 4 divine ships was too fast. Those divine beasts and ferocious beasts didn't have time to chase after them before they were shaken off. Just like that, the 4 divine ships left the unknown land safely and returned to the territory of the Kongming Temple. When the 4 divine ships stepped into the territory of the Kongming Temple and saw the first city, the 3 Hall Masters heaved a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. The first Hall Master was right. In the previous battle, they had been completely suppressed by Ji Tianqing's intelligence and tactics. They had long been traumatized. Before they returned to the territory of the temple, they didn't dare to let down their guard. They were afraid that Ji Tianqing would come up with some scheme and cause them to suffer heavy casualties. Chapter 45-71. After the 4 divine warships entered the Kongming Temple's territory, they slowed down significantly. After all, it was very safe in their own territory. They did not have to worry about the threat of the Beast Tribe. The 4 Temple Masters controlled the divine warships and rushed back to the Kongming Mystic Realm. They also sent out communication jade slips to the various Hall Masters at the border. Although they had escaped from the unknown lands and safely returned to their territory, the Beast Tribe would not dare to send troops to kill them. However, they had to be more vigilant and strengthen the defense line and patrol at the border to prevent the Beast Tribe from taking the opportunity to launch a counterattack on the Kongming Temple's territory. Although the possibility of this was very small, the Beast Tribe had always been impulsive and bloodthirsty. Perhaps they had been blinded by their victory and mistakenly thought that they were already very strong and had enough strength to defeat the Kongming Temple. In their excitement, the leader of the Beast Tribe sent out a large number of elite Beast Tribe warriors to attack the Kongming Temple's territory. This was definitely not a fantasy. It was something that was very likely to happen. After the 4 Temple Masters gave their orders, the various Hall Masters at the border all started to move after receiving the orders. They gathered a large number of elite fighters and formed a defense line at the border. They patrolled day and night without stopping, not letting go of any suspicious areas. The 4 Temple Masters did not specify how long they would patrol and be on alert for. However, the attitude they displayed and the tone of their orders made the Hall Masters of the various branches realize that this was not a short-term mission. The Hall Masters had heard that the Temple Masters had gathered a large number of elite fighters to enter the unknown lands and encircle the elite fighters of the Beast Tribe. They did not expect the Temple Masters to return so soon after the incident. It seemed that not only did the Kongming Temple not obtain victory, they also did not gain any advantages. This caused the various branch hall masters to feel uneasy in their hearts, and they discussed it in private. Of course, before the temple masters gave the order to remove the defense line, they had to remain vigilant and not relax. The duration of the mission could be 3 to 5 months, or it could be 3 to 5 years. Therefore, the hall masters secretly adjusted their manpower and divided their elite fighters into 2 groups to carry out the mission in rotation. When the defense lines of the various hall masters were connected, the border area of the Kongming Temple entered a state of total martial law. Although this defense line that spanned hundreds of millions of miles could not be said to be flawless and could not guarantee that no beast tribe would be able to pass through. However, a certain number of elite beast tribe warriors could not quietly break through the defense line and sneak into the territory of the Kongming Temple. Another 8 days passed. The airship of the 4 temple masters finally returned to the headquarters of the Temple of Kongming with more than 500 defeated soldiers. The many elite experts who stayed behind in the Kongming secret realm had been waiting for the news of the triumphant return of the palace masters. As long as they received the news that they had defeated the beast race army, they would definitely put on a grand ceremony to welcome the return of the hall masters. Who would have thought that the hall masters would suddenly return to the secret realm without any prior notice? This caught the soldiers and experts who were guarding the secret realm by surprise. They were also at a loss. To Kongming to them, to Kongming Ming there. Some of the commanders and other experts gathered their courage and went to meet the palace masters. They wanted to know what had happened and what the situation was like. They had never thought that when they arrived at the divine palaces of the hall masters, they would see over 100 heavily injured elite god kings leave gloomily, returning to their residences. This scene caused the commanders to be bewildered and filled with shock. They could not believe that the hall masters had returned to the Kongming secret realm silently and hastily, only to bring back a few hundred elite god kings who were heavily injured and on the verge of death. What did this mean? Could it be that the Kongming Temple had encircled and annihilated the beasts and returned in defeat? If that was really the case, wouldn't it mean that several thousand elite god kings had died in an unknown place, while only the 4 hall masters and a few hundred soldiers had managed to escape? This shouldn't be possible. It was too horrifying. The commanders could not believe or accept this result, and immediately abandoned this thought. Or perhaps, the great battle against the beasts was still ongoing, and the palace masters were just escorting the injured back. This did not seem to make sense either. The great battle was ongoing. The palace masters should be overseeing the army, remaining in an unknown place, or even taking part in the battle personally. There was another possibility: the Kongming Temple had won the great battle, but the 4 palace masters escorted the more heavily injured soldiers back to recuperate first. The remaining few thousand elite god kings were on the way back to the Kongming secret realm. It was just that they were traveling at a slower speed, that was why they were separated from the 4 palace masters. This thought was somewhat believable. But when the commanders gathered together and discussed in private, they found some loopholes and also overturned this conjecture. After all, the 4 palace masters' warships were all pinnacle divine weapons. The internal space was very large and could accommodate several thousand elite god kings. Forget about the 4 palace masters returning in a divine warship at the same time. Even if there was only one divine warship, it could also bring back those several thousand elite god kings who participated in the battle. This matter is too fishy. Yeah. There's no reason for the 4 palace masters to only bring a few hundred people back. If the great battle was still ongoing, the 4 palace masters would definitely not leave the unknown place. But if the great battle had already ended and we had won, the 4 palace masters would not return secretly. They would definitely inform us in advance and tell us the news of victory. Back then, before I entered the divine palace, I saw those severely injured soldiers. From the condition of their injuries and their demeanor, I felt that the chances of us winning were not high. Yeah. I also saw the 3rd palace master. His expression was very ugly. He was obviously filled with anger and did not have the slightest bit of joy or excitement from winning. Why did only the first palace master, second palace master, third palace master and fourth palace master return? Where did the fifth palace master go? Could there have been an accident? There's a saying. When we have eliminated all kinds of options and are unable to make a choice, the most ridiculous answer is usually the truth. What? You mean, we lost the battle? Thousands of soldiers died on the battlefield and only a few hundred people survived and were rescued by the four palace masters. According to what you said, the fifth palace master did not appear. Could it be that he also met with an accident and died on the battlefield? That's impossible. Our Kongming temple is so powerful. How could the ignorant and lowly beast clan defeat us? I don't care if you believe it or not, but I definitely won't believe it. Alright everyone, it's useless for us to make wild guesses here. Why don't we ask the palace masters personally and we will know the result? A few commander-level experts who held great authority discussed in private and roughly guessed the answer. Chapter 45-72. Although the few commanders already had an answer in their hearts. No matter how shocked they were, no matter how unbelievable it was, they could only accept this result. Of course, this was only their analysis and inference. Before getting confirmation, they absolutely did not dare to come to a conclusion. The best way was naturally to find the few hall masters and ask clearly. But, when they really wanted to ask the various hall masters, the few commanders all hesitated and thought of retreating in their hearts. This was clearly sending themselves to be scolded, a matter of touching bad luck. If the Kongming Temple's great defeat was fake, they would definitely be reprimanded by the few hall masters if they went to ask for the answer. If the Kongming Temple really returned in a crushing defeat, they going to ask at this time was equivalent to adding fuel to the fire. They would definitely anger the few hall masters and receive even more severe scolding. Therefore, the few commanders could only suppress the doubts and uneasiness in their hearts and discuss endlessly in private. In less than 2 days, the news spread in the Kongming mystic realm. Many Divine King experts all knew the news that the Kongming Temple returned in a crushing defeat. Among them, a portion of people knew from the few commanders' narration. But the vast majority of people did not need to hear what the few commanders said and could also guess this result. Because the news could not be concealed. Those 500 heavily injured elite divine kings all returned to their respective residences and went into closed-door cultivation to heal their injuries. During this period, there were people who saw their wretched appearances. Those injured elite divine kings all had their own friends and brothers. Naturally, there would be people who went to visit them and ask about the results of the great battle. Paper could not contain fire. Even if those injured divine kings were secretive and unwilling to speak of the truth. But, through their injuries, mental state, and some words, everyone could also deduce the result. Just like this, the news that the Kongming Temple returned in a crushing defeat and that the 4 hall masters led the 500 wounded soldiers back to the Kongming mystic realm spread rapidly. In the Kongming mystic realm, countless people were discussing animatedly. They were shocked and felt incredulous. There were also many Divine King experts who were very concerned about the 5th Hall Master's whereabouts. Everyone only saw the 4 Hall Masters return, but they did not see any trace of the 5th Hall Master. This inevitably caused everyone to discuss and speculate. What happened to the 5th Hall Master? Could it be that he died on the battlefield and fell? This guess was very bold and sounded very absurd. After all, a god emperor was a symbol of invincibility and immortality. In everyone's memory, in the entire planet of origin, they had never heard of a god emperor falling. If the 5th Hall Master was really killed, then he would be the first god emperor to fall on the planet of origin. As the news spread more and more, everyone in the Kongming secret realm knew about it, and then it gradually spread outside. The entire Bright Void secret realm was in an uproar, and it was filled with terror, panic, and worry. Rumors spread everywhere, and everyone had different opinions. After all, the Kongming Temple's defeat proved that the beast race had risen, or that they had grasped some great killing weapon. With the bloodthirsty nature of the beasts, it was very likely that they would take advantage of the situation to launch a counterattack and invade the Kongming Temple's territory. Everyone felt a sense of urgency, as if a great battle was about to begin. The anxiety in their hearts grew stronger and stronger. After the 4 Hallmasters returned to the Bright Void secret realm, they first settled down more than 500 injured soldiers, and then went into seclusion for a few days to treat their injuries and recover their divine power and mental state. They originally thought that after a few days, when their mental states had recovered, they would gather the elites for a meeting. They did not have the intention to hide the results of the battle. They only wanted to announce it a few days later and come up with a corresponding strategy and order. In the end, in just a few days, the entire Bright Void secret realm was in chaos. The 10,000 people who stayed behind to guard the Bright Void secret realm were all uneasy and panicked. It could be said that the morale of the army was in chaos, and rumors were flying everywhere. This was unexpected to the Hallmasters, and they were deeply angry and disappointed. The first Hallmaster did not hesitate to give the order to gather the Hallmasters and many commanders for a meeting in the conference hall. After the order was passed down, the news also spread. The 3 Hallmasters and 12 commander-level powerhouses hurried to the conference hall. Many elite god kings were also secretly discussing, guessing what the Hallmasters would do and say. After 15 minutes, 15 experts gathered in the conference hall. The host of the conference hall sat on the main seat with a sacred and dignified scepter. The 3 Hallmasters sat on the left and right sides of the conference hall, solemnly sitting on divine jade chairs. As for the 12 commander-level experts, there were 5 elders and 7 generals. They were also divided into 2 rows in the hall. Bam! The wide and heavy door closed, and the light in the conference hall dimmed. The silent conference hall was filled with a heavy and austere atmosphere, making everyone anxious. The first Hallmaster's face was gloomy and solemn. The other 3 Hallmasters sat on their chairs with lowered eyelids and expressionless faces. Seeing this scene, the 12 commander-level experts felt even more uneasy and fearful. Today, I have gathered everyone here to announce something. Finally, the first Hallmaster spoke. He did not waste his breath, nor did he beat around the bush. He said straightforwardly, I believe that everyone already knows. That's right, the plan to encircle the beast race's capital and capture the desolate god emperor has failed. Of our 4,000 elite god kings, more than 3,400 died on the battlefield and were reduced to ashes. Only 500 or so managed to escape. Even the 5th Hallmaster's divine body was destroyed, leaving behind only a damaged godhead. The first Hallmaster's straightforward declaration of the truth was hard for everyone to accept, shattering their last shred of hope. But by saying this, at least he was open and honest, preventing everyone from making wild guesses and spreading all sorts of rumors. The elders and generals whispered to each other for a while before quickly calming down. This was because they knew that the first Hallmaster had something more important to say. As expected, the first Hallmaster's expression was dignified as he said in a grave tone, the reason we suffered such heavy losses in this battle was because we underestimated the enemy and were not prepared enough. From today onwards, we must change our understanding in view of the beast race. They are definitely not an ignorant race. Without us noticing, they have long been thinking of ways to learn divine abilities and skills and nurture their forces. Most importantly, that young desolate god emperor has allied himself with the beast race. Although his cultivation level is not high, he is full of cunning and uses all sorts of divine abilities and tricks. It is impossible to guard against him. It is precisely because of his help that the beast race was able to achieve victory and inflict heavy losses on us. The Kongming Temple will never forget this debt. As long as we do not capture him, we will not be able to settle this debt. However, our top priority is not to seek revenge against the beast race, nor is it to continue capturing that desolate god emperor. What we need to do is strengthen the border defense and guard against the beast race's counterattack. Moreover, we need to learn from our humiliation and recover as quickly as possible to strengthen our forces. Only when our forces are strong enough will we be able to exact our revenge. I hope that when we set out again in several hundred years, we will be victorious in every battle. Chapter 45-73. The words of the first hallmaster and the series of orders he gave clearly stated the attitude of the Kongming Temple. In the next few hundred years, they would defend against the invasion of the beast race and find ways to quickly recover their strength. Unless it was necessary, they would not take the initiative to attack, and they would not rashly seek revenge on the beast race. With the failure of the previous battle as a lesson, the Kongming Temple would not attack so easily. If they wanted to start another war, they would have to have absolute confidence in winning. The elders and generals all understood the determination of the first hallmaster and expressed their obedience to his orders. Not long after, the meeting ended. Many elders and generals left the hall to carry out their mission. The four hallmasters also returned to their respective palaces and began to heal and cultivate in seclusion. Half a day later, the words of the first hallmaster and his orders spread throughout the Kongming realm. With a definite answer, many people no longer made wild guesses and had an idea in their hearts. Knowing that the beast race had also paid a heavy price and that it was unlikely for them to counterattack, everyone's worries and concerns dissipated. Of course, the rise of the beast race was like a thorn in everyone's heart. Even if the beast race did not launch a counterattack in the next few hundred years, the two sides would be like fire and water. However, the two sides were like fire and water. One day, they would have to fight again. At that time, it would be a situation of life and death. There would be no luck. An invisible pressure lingered in everyone's hearts and made them deeply understand. Next, they had to work harder to cultivate and think of ways to increase their strength and combat strength. Otherwise, when they fought with the beast race in the future, how could they win? Peaceful days always passed quickly. Half a year passed quickly. The more than 200,000 beast race reinforcements who stayed in Li City to recuperate had basically recovered their ability to move after half a year of treatment and rest. Although many of the beast race's injuries were still very serious and would take at least a few decades to recover, they could not stay in Li City. However, they could not stay in Li City to recuperate. After they could move freely, they left Li City one after another, returning to their respective territories and homes. After the 200,000 reinforcements left, there were only 40,000 beast race citizens left in Li City. It became even quieter. Half of the beast race citizens had participated in the battle and were more or less injured. They stayed in their residences and continued to recuperate. As for the other 20,000 beast race citizens who did not participate in the battle, although their strength and cultivation levels were lower, they could still play a role at this time. Li City was naturally unharmed under the protection of the Great Defensive Formation. But outside of Li City, everything within 200,000 miles had been destroyed by the battle. Under the leadership of many lords and generals, more than 20,000 beastmen walked out of Li City and went to the surrounding ruins to cast spells. His purpose and mission was to rebuild the ruins around Li City. Using divine abilities and spells, he created a large number of mountains, forests, and rivers to restore the original landscape. After all, Li City of the beast race was hidden in the depths of an unknown place and had to be concealed. Li City of the beast race of thousand of the beast race was a target of Li City of the formation of beast race. Of the god of formation of beast. Li City was hall of the beast grade of Li City of thousand Li City. It was another scene of beautiful mountains, with layers upon layers of mountain ranges, and there were even white clouds covering the mountain range. Under the cover of the mountains, Li City was no longer abrupt and conspicuous. It became even more hidden. Of course, this alone was far from enough. After Lai Tian and Yen Li finished their seclusion, they would set up more great defensive formations around Li City to hide and protect it. Only an emperor-level great defensive formation could really play the role of covering and protecting Li City. And within Li City, there were only 3 people who could set up an emperor-level great defensive formation. After the 20,000 beast race citizens completed their mission, they returned to Li City. Next, they had more important things to do. That was to work hard to improve their strength and think of ways to increase their combat strength. Although the beast race had won the previous battle, the Kongming Temple's vitality was greatly damaged and they would not dare to invade again for a few hundred years. But all the beast race citizens knew that their victory was entirely due to the help of Long Tian God Emperor. The hundreds of thousands of casualties in the previous battle were enough to prove the weakness of the beast race. After a few years, Long Tian God Emperor would leave the unknown lands. After a few hundred years, if the beast race fought with the Kongming Temple again, could the beast race win without the help of Long Tian God Emperor? Even if they did not win, could the beast race withstand the attack of the Kongming Temple? It was very difficult, very difficult. Therefore, the beast race citizens had to improve their strength. It was already urgent. Unknowingly, 2.5 years had passed. In these 2 years, Li City had been very peaceful. All the beast race citizens were full of energy, thinking of ways to improve their strength. Just as Ji Tianqing had expected, Lai Tian and Yan Li used more than 2 years to finally master the 10 divine abilities that Ji Tianqing had taught them. Although they had only mastered 10 divine abilities and reached the entry level, they were still a distance away from the initial level. But they were already able to take charge of the overall situation and set up several emperor-level divine formations. If they had the corresponding refining materials, Yan Li could also refine emperor-level divine artifacts. This was undoubtedly a huge improvement for the beast race. Lai Tian and Yan Li were full of joy when they came out of seclusion and immediately got to work. Yan Li gathered all the beast race members in Li City who knew how to refine artifacts and set out to build a huge artifact workshop. This was the experience that Ji Tianqing had imparted to it. A qualified, large-scale artifact workshop could accommodate hundreds to thousands of craftsmen working at the same time. Among the thousands of craftsmen, they could divide the work and work together. Not only would it be fast, but the efficiency would also be very high. Yan Li's goal was to build a workshop that could accommodate 5,000 craftsmen. After the workshop was completed, when the skills of the thousands of craftsmen were mature, they could refine divine artifacts in batches and arm tens of millions of beast race citizens. This was one of the important shortcuts to increasing the beast race's combat strength. Lai Tian gathered more than 3,000 beast race citizens who knew how to set up formations in Li City and set up large formations around Li City. Half of the 3,000 beast race elites who knew how to set up formations had listened to Ji Tianqing's preaching before learning how to set up formations. They had the theoretical knowledge and the corresponding divine abilities, but they had no practical experience. With Lai Tian leading them to set up the formations, it gave them the opportunity to practice and improve themselves. Therefore, many of the beast race elites were enthusiastic and worked especially hard when they followed Lai Tian to set up the formations. Just like that, Li City began the second round of construction to provide the basic conditions for rapid development, growth, and rise in the future. Chapter 45-74. In the beginning, whether it was Yan Li building the crafting workshop or Lai Tian setting up the defensive array, their efficiency was not high and their progress was slow. But as time passed, they gradually gained experience and their efficiency began to increase rapidly. Half a year passed in the blink of an eye. In this time, Yan Li led more than 2,000 craftsmen to build a crafting workshop with a radius of 100 miles. When the new, majestic crafting workshop was completed, countless beasts cheered excitedly. Yan Li was also gratified. Looking at the huge crafting workshop, he swore to himself that in the future, he would provide all the beasts with powerful divine weapons and equipment. In addition, after the crafting workshop was running smoothly, he would train a group of alchemists who were proficient in the art of alchemy and build an elixir workshop of the same scale. Of course, this was not his idea, but Ji Tianqing's guidance. Ji Tianqing had said a long time ago that the cultivation resources in the unknown lands were incomparably rich. Whether it was ores, metals, herbs, or divine fruits, they could all be used to great effect. Unfortunately, the beasts did not know how to craft or refine elixirs, so they wasted so many natural treasures. If they could make use of them, the strength of the beasts would increase tenfold. Just think about it. In the past, when the beasts were injured, they could only eat very primitive herbs and fruits. Then, they could rely on their own self-healing abilities to recover in seclusion. However, if the beasts built an elixir workshop, they could refine all kinds of divine pills in batches. The effect would be different. Regardless of whether it was in their daily lives or in the midst of battle, once the beastmen were injured, they would be able to quickly recover by consuming divine pills. The beasts themselves had strong divine bodies and powerful self-healing abilities. If they were equipped with advanced divine weapons and supplemented with various divine pills and elixirs, the army formed by the beasts would be victorious in every battle. On the other side, Lai Tian led the 20,000 beasts and set up more than 40 great arrays in half a year. 6 of them were emperor-level divine arrays, while the other 42 were supreme-grade king-level arrays. However, Sky Splitter had successfully cultivated the divine ability that Ji Tianqing had imparted to him. He had learned the method of layering formations and mastering them through comprehensive study. 42 supreme-grade king-level formations could also be combined and stacked to form a few emperor-level divine formations. With the protection of so many great formations, Li City was not only covered, but also protected. Next time, even without Ji Tianqing holding the fort, the Kongming Temple's army would not be able to easily break through the formation and charge into Li City. At the very least, the existence of several dozen formations would buy the beast tribe a lot of time to react. After the defensive formation was completed, the more than 20,000 beasts cheered and jumped for joy. They were extremely excited. Sky Splitter was also filled with gratification. He secretly made up his mind to study the Tao of array formation in depth. His short-term goal was to cultivate all 10 types of formation Tao divine abilities that Ji Tianqing had imparted to him to the stage of great success. His long-term goal was to be able to draw inferences and create his own array Tao. He would be able to set up an even more powerful divine array to protect the people of the beast race. Of course, it was also imperative to select the most talented and qualified experts from the beast race to focus on nurturing and guiding them. The 3-year agreement between Ji Tianqing and the beast tribe was finally up. 3 years had passed in the outside world, and he had already cultivated in seclusion in the distorted spacetime for 150 years. After recuperating in seclusion for more than 100 years, his internal and external injuries had recovered, and he had also returned to his peak state. In addition, he had fought with the few temple masters of the Kongming Temple, fought with them, and was injured. It was also a good training for him. After the actual battles, he had accumulated a lot of experience and had also gained a lot of enlightenment. This was very helpful for him to increase his strength, refine his divine abilities, and condense the power of the heavenly Tao. During the seclusion, after his injuries had recovered, he began to try to condense the third Taoist rhyme. Currently, he could only fuse his own enlightenment with the power of the heavenly Tao to form some embryonic forms. However, this was already a great improvement. It proved that he had a high chance of condensing the third Taoist rhyme within 10 years. Early in the morning. It was the time that Ji Tianqing, Sky Splitter, and Yen Li agreed to come out of seclusion. Early in the morning, Sky Splitter and Yen Li brought a dozen lords to Ji Tianqing's palace. Everyone waited quietly and looked at the palace door with anticipation. Not long after, the door of the palace opened. Ji Tianqing, who was dressed in a white robe and had a jade belt around his waist, stepped out of the door and appeared in front of everyone. although his expression was calm and his aura was indifferent. However, in the eyes of everyone, he seemed to have merged with heaven and earth. His words and actions were extremely majestic, and he even had the sacred aura of the heavenly Tao. Seeing him like this and sensing his divine power aura, which was calm and as vast as the sea, Sky Splitter and Yen Li hurriedly bowed and smiled. "Brother Long Tian, congratulations on coming out of seclusion." Looking at Brother Long Tian's condition, you must have recovered from all your injuries, and your strength has even improved. After Sky Splitter and Yen Li bowed, the dozen lords also bowed and paid their respects to Ji Tianqing. If it was said that when Ji Tianqing came to Li City, these generals only bowed to him out of courtesy and respect for the God Emperor, then today, all the beast race people bowed to him out of respect, worship, and gratitude from the bottom of their hearts. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and cupped his hands to return the greeting. After exchanging a few pleasantries, the two sides began to talk about business. Sky Splitter took the lead and said, "Brother Long Tian, today our 3-year agreement is up. You can leave Li City at will. However, before you leave, we have to fulfill our original promise." After speaking, he took out 2 items from his spatial ring. One of them was a square, black metal box that looked a little plain. The other item was a palm-sized bag with dragon patterns on it. Ji Tianqing could tell at a glance that these 2 storage divine tools, which weren't luxurious or exquisite enough, were most likely made by Yen Li himself. Sure enough, Yen Li saw him staring at the 2 items and couldn't help but explain awkwardly, "Brother Long Tian, these are 2 storage items that I tried to refine. They are a little rough and simple. I hope you won't laugh at them." Ji Tianqing nodded to express his understanding and said, "It's fine. They are just used to store refining materials. I'll accept them as a souvenir." After speaking, he took the initiative to take the black iron box and the bag from Sky Splitter's hands. Without needing him to scan with his divine sense, Sky Splitter took the initiative to explain, "I'm really ashamed. Although we have tried our best to search these 3 years, we still haven't been able to collect too many Emperor-grade materials. At present, we can only find 9 kinds of Emperor-grade materials related to refining, and they are all in these 2 divine artifacts." Chapter 45-75. For 3 whole years, the Beast Tribe had used a lot of manpower and resources, and spent a lot of effort, but they had only managed to collect 9 types of Emperor-grade materials. From this, it could be seen how precious and hard to find Emperor-grade materials were. Of course, the cultivation resources in the unknown lands were very rich, and there were countless treasures. The Beast Tribe could only find so much, probably because they were not good at weapon refinement and treasure hunting. Since Lai Tian felt embarrassed and apologized, Ji Tianqing did not pursue the matter further. This was because he believed that Lai Tian and Yen Li would definitely do their best to deal with this matter. They would not hide anything or neglect anything. Even if they did not handle the matter well, it was because their abilities were limited, and it had nothing to do with their attitude. Ji Tianqing accepted the black iron box and beast skin pouch, then said to Lai Tian, "I have fulfilled my promise, and you have also fulfilled your part of the agreement. Since that's the case, if you don't have anything else, let's part ways here." Lai Tian hesitated, and his expression was still a little awkward. He looked like he wanted to say something but stopped. Seeing his reaction, Ji Tianqing could guess that he definitely had something else to say. As expected, Lai Tian smiled and said, "Brother Long Tian, if you're not in a hurry to leave, I have a presumptuous request. I hope you can help me." To Ji Tianqing, he had already waited for 3 years, so he did not mind waiting another 3 to 5 days. Moreover, he had already helped the Beast Tribe a lot. Not only did he receive the Beast Tribe's support and love, but he also received a corresponding reward. If Lai Tian's request was not a big deal, he could also help. Lai Tian was a little shy in front of everyone, so he asked tentatively, "Brother Long Tian, I used 2.5 years to master the 10 types of divine abilities. In the past 6 months, I led my people to set up many large formations. Although I have already done my best, I don't think there is much of a problem. However, before you leave, I still hope that you can take a look and give me some advice and suggestions. It was obvious that Skysplitter wanted Ji Tianqing to test the results of his cultivation and give him some pointers on the array Dao. However, in front of so many people, it couldn't say it too clearly and had to be tactful. Ji Tianqing, of course, understood what it meant. He turned to look at Yan Li and asked with a faint smile, "What about you? Do you have any requests? Or do you need my help?" Of course, Yan Li had something to do. Originally, it wanted to wait until the matter of the sky splitting was settled before finding an opportunity to ask Ji Tianqing for guidance on the construction of its crafting workshop. Since Ji Tianqing took the initiative to ask, it certainly wouldn't refuse. It quickly nodded and said, "Of course, I also have a favor that I need you to help me with. In the past half a year, I led the craftsmen to build a crafting workshop, basically according to the ideas you provided me. Although my people and I are very satisfied, I hope that you can take a look and give me some suggestions for improvement." Unknowingly, 3 years had changed Skysplit's and Loth's attitudes towards Ji Tianqing. Back then, Ji Tianqing came to Li City as a captive and was forced to make a 3-year agreement with Skysplit and Loth. Now, not only did the entire beast race revere him, but Skysplit and Loth also respected him very much. The relationship between the two could be described as a teacher and a friend. Even Loth, who was the most wary of him, had long changed his opinion and attitude. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and agreed to Loth's request. Next, Skysplit, Loth, and the others took Ji Tianqing to check the defensive array around Li City. The 4th defensive array of Li City was personally set up by Ji Tianqing. Its complexity, effect, and power were similar to the 3rd array. With the existence of this array, Li City was guaranteed to be safe. At least, it wouldn't be broken through quickly. Even if the God Emperor of the Kongming Temple attacked again, it could delay them for a few days. To the beast race, this was one of the important treasures that Ji Tianqing had left for them. Of course, they would use it forever. However, the array that Skysplit and many of his people had set up together was also very important. That was Li City's outermost defense, and also the first barrier when the war began. Even the ordinary beast race people knew the importance of those arrays. Ji Tianqing was even more well aware. Therefore, he carefully observed the dozens of arrays that Skysplit had set up and gave a very pertinent and practical evaluation and suggestion. Ji Tianqing gave his approval and encouragement to Skysplitter's method of using multiple formations to increase its power. This would be a method that it would often use when setting up arrays in the future. And with dozens of arrays stacked together, there were countless combinations, sequences, and changes. This was not something that could be easily taught. It required one's own comprehension. In the future, how far Skysplit's array Dao attainments could reach would depend on its own fortune. In addition, Ji Tianqing pointed out some flaws and problems with the arrays that Skysplit had set up, and gave the corresponding suggestions for improvement. After listening, Skysplit was enlightened. He understood the reason for the correction and also knew how to improve it. He also understood the principle behind it. In the future, when he set up divine arrays, he would definitely take this as a warning. This matter took half a day's time. After half a day, Skysplit's matter was resolved. Skysplit, Yan Li, and the others brought Ji Tianqing to visit the crafting workshop that Yan Li had built. The crafting workshop with a radius of 100 miles was located on the southeast side of Li City. It was formed by hundreds of huge houses and palaces, and there were more than 30 huge divine furnaces standing in the middle. Each divine furnace had consumed countless materials and resources and was meticulously built. These divine furnaces were engraved with array patterns and were supported by the divine power of heaven and earth. They could be used to refine artifacts, and in the future, they could also be used to refine pills. In order to engrave those divine arrays, Yen Li had specially asked Skysplit for help. Ji Tianqing and the others visited the entire crafting workshop. He not only carefully inspected the divine furnaces, but also the many houses and palaces. After his inspection, the crafting workshop that Yen Li and the other craftsmen had built was basically up to standard. In many places, it could even be seen that Yen Li had put in a lot of effort. In some details, Yen Li had added his own ideas and made some original designs. After Ji Tianqing finished looking, he gave Yen Li a positive encouragement for his efforts and contributions, but also gave the corresponding suggestions. Yen Li listened carefully and felt that he had benefited a lot. Not only had his existing problems been solved, but he had also opened up his mind and had more wonderful ideas. In particular, the two ideas and suggestions that Ji Tianqing had mentioned made Yen Li very excited. He knew that as long as he followed Ji Tianqing's ideas and suggestions, the crafting workshop would be able to reach a higher level. It would also play a crucial role in the future development of the beast race. Yen Li firmly remembered what Ji Tianqing had said and didn't dare to forget a single word. Chapter 45-76. Having received Ji Tianqing's guidance, Lai Tian and Yen Li could be said to be satisfied. If it weren't for the fact that they had to send Ji Tianqing away, they wouldn't have been able to hold back their surging and excited emotions and would have tried to improve it now. Everyone thought that Ji Tianqing would leave after Lai Tian and Yen Li's problem was solved. But what Lai Tian and Yen Li didn't expect was that he revealed a smile and said to Yen Li, "Your problem has been solved. Isn't it this emperor's turn now?" "Ah. Brother Long Tian, what else do you want?" Lai Tian and Yen Li were stunned for a moment, not understanding what he meant. Ji Tianqing pointed at the crafting workshop built by Yen Li and said, "You also know that this emperor asked you to help collect those emperor-grade crafting materials in order to forge an emperor-grade divine artifact. To be honest, if this emperor left Li City and went to forge an emperor-grade divine artifact, it would take a lot of time and effort. But you have a ready-made crafting workshop here and many craftsmen, which can save this emperor a lot of time. Most importantly, with the help of a god emperor-grade crafting grandmaster like you, this emperor will be more at ease." Lai Tian and Yen Li were stunned for a moment, but they immediately reacted and nodded in agreement without hesitation. "Good. Brother Long Tian, as long as you need any help, we will not shirk our duty. The crafting divine abilities I learned were all taught by you. Since you want to use the crafting workshop, of course I will fully cooperate with you. Actually, I also have the idea of forging an emperor-grade divine artifact, but I'm afraid that I don't have enough experience and maturity, so I don't dare to take action. This is also an excellent opportunity for me to train." The happiest person was Yen Li. Because Ji Tianqing used the crafting workshop to forge an emperor-grade divine artifact and even let it assist, this was a chance for it to train itself. If it could learn some experience and techniques while assisting Ji Tianqing in crafting weapons, it would be a huge improvement for it. After the matter was settled, everyone immediately began to move. Lai Tian quickly led the elite beasts under his command to improve the defensive formation he had set up. Yen Li gathered many blacksmiths, entering the blacksmith workshop to prepare and wait for orders. Ji Tianqing and Yen Li joined hands to improve the shortcomings of the crafting workshop. While casting the technique to modify the blacksmith workshop, Yen Li was very serious and active. Just like a student who wanted to show off in front of the teacher, he wanted to get Ji Tianqing's praise and encouragement. Ji Tianqing understood what it meant and gave it some encouragement and guidance. This greatly encouraged Yen Li, and her heart was filled with pride and anticipation. In fact, Ji Tianqing had taken some time to look at the 9 types of refining materials collected by the beast tribe when he was inspecting the workshop. The 9 materials were all emperor grade. They were the Crimson Sun Divine Gold, the 10,000-year Divine Iron, the Primordial Jade Quintessence, the Extreme Ean Frost Liquid. Sky Splitter was right. Every monarch-grade material was related to refining artifacts. Although Lai Tian and Yen Li didn't know what kind of divine weapon Ji Tianqing wanted to refine. But these materials could basically be used. Even if they weren't enough, they weren't far off. And after Ji Tianqing checked and thought carefully for a long time, he felt that these 9 types of refining materials were basically enough. After all, he wasn't refining a monarch-grade divine weapon out of thin air. Instead, he was using these refining materials to upgrade the supreme-grade king-grade burial of heaven sword to monarch-grade. In comparison, he needed to consume fewer refining materials and the process was simpler. Therefore, Ji Tianqing decisively decided not to leave Li City for the time being. He would first borrow Li City's refining workshop to upgrade the Sword of Burial of Heaven to monarch grade. Ji Tianqing and Yen Li were very efficient. The two of them only used 3 days to improve the problems of the refining workshop, increasing the efficiency of the workshop by more than 3 times. Through these 3 days of practice, coupled with Ji Tianqing's guidance, Yen Li had gained even more, and her understanding of the Tao of refining had also deepened. Ji Tianqing didn't waste time and immediately ordered the beast race craftsman to open the divine furnace and prepare to refine the divine weapon. Yen Li personally gave the order and led 1,200 elite craftsmen to jointly cast a spell to open a divine furnace. Under the joint urging of many beast race experts, the huge divine furnace that was hundreds of meters tall lit up with dazzling divine light, and the formation began to operate. Whoosh! Whoosh! As the divine light flashed, the divine furnace's power continued to increase, and a blazing divine flame ignited inside. The 1,200 beast race craftsmen were all proud to be able to participate in this refining. After all, this was the God Emperor Long Tian refining a monarch-grade divine weapon. As a participant, they were greatly fortunate and honored. All the beast race craftsmen worked very hard and meticulously carried out the task, hoping to gain some insights during the refining process. 6 hours later, the divine furnace's formation was fully activated and entered a normal state of operation. The divine flame and temperature inside the divine furnace had also reached a suitable level. Ji Tianqing finally appeared and stepped into the sky. He took out the Sword of Burial of Heaven and placed it into the divine furnace. Just like before, the first step to transforming the Burial of Heaven into a monarch-grade divine weapon was to refine the Burial of Heaven and turn it back into a sword embryo. After 3 days and 3 nights of refinement, the Sword of Burial of Heaven became a scarlet, almost transparent sword embryo in the divine furnace, as soft as water. At this state, the Sword of Burial of Heaven no longer had any impurities, and its malleability had reached the highest level. Only then did Ji Tianqing take out the 3 emperor-grade materials and place them into the furnace according to the fixed order and time. These monarch-grade materials, such as divine gold and frost iron, had a history of tens of thousands of years and contained the richest divine power of the world. After burning and refining in the divine furnace for 2 days, the 3 sets of materials melted one after another, turning into thousands of multicolored threads or billions of sparkling water droplets. At this time, Ji Tianqing, who had been sitting cross-legged near the divine furnace, began to cast a spell to control the sword embryo and the materials, using a secret refining technique to fuse them. Yen Li assisted Ji Tianqing in casting the spell while watching attentively and paying attention to the movements in the divine furnace. It knew that this was the most critical moment. Whether Ji Tianqing could successfully forge a monarch-grade divine weapon depended on whether the materials and the sword embryo could be successfully fused. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing used practical actions to prove that Yen Li's worries were unnecessary. Just 2 days later, Ji Tianqing successfully fused the first set of materials into the Sword of Burial of Heaven. Since the beginning was smooth, the following refining work was naturally smooth sailing without any setbacks. However, this matter was too delicate and complicated. It was not something that could be completed in 10 days or half a month. Time quietly passed. Ji Tianqing had been wholeheartedly focused on refining artifacts without any distractions. Yan Li also entered a very serious and obsessed state. Other than following Ji Tianqing's instructions, there was only contemplation and analysis left. Chapter 45-77. Unknowingly, a month had passed. Skysplitter had already led many beast race elites to improve Li City's defensive formation. From then on, Li City could be considered impregnable and would no longer be as simple as before. Of course, in the years to come, as long as Skysplitter's array Dao attainments continued to improve, it would superimpose Li City's defenses and set up more formations. The matter of the defensive formation came to an end for the time being. Skysplitter let the beast race elites return to Li City to rest and cultivate. It personally rushed to the artifact forging workshop to assist Ji Tianqing in forging the Emperor-level divine artifact. After all, artifact forging and array Dao were inseparable. Artifact forging required the assistance of array Dao, and at the same time, it could also increase one's array Dao cultivation. When Skysplitter entered the artifact forging workshop, it discovered that all the craftsmen were seriously carrying out their tasks and forging artifacts with all their might. Without Yan Li's urging and encouragement, all the craftsmen cherished this opportunity and learned a lot from this artifact forging. Even these ordinary craftsmen were like this. One could imagine how serious and focused Yan Li was. As Ji Tianqing's assistant, it participated and witnessed the entire process of forging the divine sword and observed especially carefully. In addition, Ji Tianqing intended to nurture and guide it. He would often tell it the essentials and experience during the key steps of artifact forging. This allowed Yan Li's array Dao attainments to rapidly improve. After practice, its artifact forging technique also improved greatly. Although Skysplitter's main direction of attack was setting up formations, it also had a strong interest in artifact forging. It was just like how Yan Li's main direction of attack was artifact forging, but it was also very interested in setting up formations and had the intention to study it in depth. To the beast race, if Skysplitter and Yan Li, the two leaders, could be proficient in artifact forging, setting up formations, and alchemy, it could not be better. Soon, Skysplitter also joined the artifact forging team. According to Ji Tianqing's instructions, it meticulously cast spells. Originally, the process of forging the burial of heaven had already reached the most important stage. With the addition and help of Skysplitter, Ji Tianqing and Yan Li would be more relaxed. The burial of heaven could also be forged sooner. Regarding Ji Tianqing's task of forging an emperor-level divine artifact, Skysplitter, Yan Li, and all the craftsmen of the beast race had a sacred sense of mission. This was the first time the artifact forging workshop was put into use after it was built. It was also the first time the beast race had participated in the forging of an emperor-level divine artifact. It could be said to be extraordinary. No matter what, the beast race had to ensure the artifact forging success. Time passed silently. Day after day passed. 3 months later, all 9 types of emperor-level refining materials had fused with the Heaven Burier sword. The burial of heaven is the same divine artifact forging. Ji Tianqing had been continuously refining for 3 months. He was mentally exhausted and had consumed a large amount of his divine power. But now, he was at a critical juncture of refining the Heaven's Burial Sword, and he needed to ceaselessly execute techniques to layer restrictions onto the Heaven's Burial Sword and fuse divine Dao laws and the energy of the Heaven Dao into it. The quality and quality of the materials could only determine the quality and quality of the divine artifact. But the strength and power of the divine artifact depended on the amount of divine Dao laws, restriction arrays, and heavenly Dao power contained in the divine artifact. Therefore, this was the most important step in forging the burial of heaven. Ji Tianqing could not relax. He could only persevere and raise the power of the burial of heaven to the maximum. Time flew by. Another 3 months passed. It had been half a year since Ji Tianqing had started crafting weapons. The forging of the burial of heaven was finally complete. In the past 3 months, Ji Tianqing, with the help of Yan Li and Sky Splitter, infused the burial of heaven with 2,300 divine Dao laws, 99,000 restriction arrays, and vast heavenly Dao power. This was already the peak state that Ji Tianqing could achieve at present. After the forging was completed, the burial of heaven was still left in the furnace to be nurtured. It still needed to be nurtured for another month before it could be taken out of the furnace. After Ji Tianqing, Yan Li, and the others finished their work, they were exhausted and weak. But this time, the forging was completed successfully and the progress was very smooth. Everyone was in high spirits. Especially Yan Li, Sky Splitter, and the beast race craftsmen. They were filled with pride and could not help but cheer excitedly. From today onwards, Yan Li and Sky Splitter had experience in forging emperor-grade divine artifacts. The beast race craftsmen also felt extremely proud because they had participated in the forging of emperor-grade divine artifacts. Their formation Dao cultivation had improved greatly. In the future, when they cultivated formation Dao, they would definitely advance by leaps and bounds. Ji Tianqing thanked Sky Splitter and Yan Li, but Sky Splitter and Yan Li did not dare to claim credit. They thanked Ji Tianqing instead. Because Ji Tianqing could give them the opportunity to participate in the forging and guide them so much about forging and formation Dao. To them, this was the greatest gain. They also felt honored that the burial of heaven could be successfully forged. Both parties exchanged conventional greetings for a while and did not delay any longer. Ji Tianqing stayed beside the furnace. While looking after the furnace, he silently circulated his energy to recover his exhausted divine power. Sky Splitter and Yan Li left with the other craftsmen and returned to their respective residences to rest. In this half a year, they had exhausted too much divine power and mental strength. They were already unable to bear the burden. Especially those beast race craftsmen. Their strength was not high and their foundation was not deep enough. If it were not for their strong faith and perseverance, they would not have been able to hold on. After a month of rest and recuperation, Ji Tianqing's strength had recovered to 80%. His mental state was also normal. Although he had not recovered to his peak state, it did not affect him much. Today, the burial of heaven's sword had been nourished in the furnace for a month. It had completely taken shape and calmed down the violent energy. Its condition was stable. The emperor-level divine sword was finally going to be born. Early in the morning, Sky Splitter and Yan Li led many lords and beast race elites to the weapon forging workshop and arrived near the furnace. Everyone knew that today was the day of the emperor weapon's birth. Hence, they had specially come to observe and admire the emperor weapon's elegance. The time was up. Ji Tianqing stopped circulating his energy and flew near the furnace. He began to circulate his energy. He shot out beams of divine light to remove the seal on the furnace and gradually opened it. Swoosh! Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Soon, the seal on the furnace was removed. Endless five-colored divine light shot up into the sky from the furnace and into the clouds. Buzz! An earth-shattering sword cry rang out, reverberating endlessly in Li City, shocking everyone's mind. In the next moment, everyone saw a sacred and majestic black figure slowly rise up into the sky amidst the myriad of multicolored lights. The black shadow that was hundreds of feet tall was formed by the sword chi of the burial of heaven. The divine sword floated high in the sky, surrounded by ink-black sword chi. Millions of rays of divine light surged around it. There was even a divine golden light flickering like the sun hanging high in the sky. Just as everyone was cheering for the birth of the emperor weapon, deafening thunder rumbled in the sky. The vast and mighty power of the way of heaven descended. Obviously, the way of heaven had sensed the birth of the emperor weapon. It had also sent down divine lightning and a vision of heaven and earth to congratulate it. Chapter 45-78. At this moment, thunder rumbled in the sky above Li City. Thousands of streaks of auspicious aura filled the sky. The entire Li city was filled with a sacred and majestic aura. There was also the invisible power of the heavenly Tao surging. Not only were the beasts observing around the divine cauldron alarmed, but the tens of thousands of beasts in Li city were also alarmed. Everyone looked up at the sky, stunned by the scene of the emperor weapon being born. The dazzling divine light and the majestic phenomenon of heaven and earth made everyone cheer in excitement. This scene would leave a deep impression on all the beasts. They would not forget it for many years. Especially the craftsmen of the beasts. They were even more encouraged. They secretly swore in their hearts that they would do their best to study the art of weapon forging in the future. They wanted to strive to forge emperor-level divine weapons for the beasts as soon as possible. Only when the beasts had enough emperor-level divine weapons would they be qualified to fight against the Kongming Temple. Otherwise, with the crude and natural emperor-level divine weapons in the hands of Lai Tian and Yen Li, they would not be able to fight against the Kongming Temple. After a full 2 hours, the phenomenon of heaven and earth finally dissipated. The earth-shattering thunder disappeared. The thousands of streaks of light dissipated. The burial of heaven finally revealed its original appearance. It was as black as ink and as cold as ice. It was as if it was the incarnation of death. However, it was not sinister. It made people hate or fear it. It also contained a sacred and majestic aura. It was as if it was the incarnation of the heavens. A divine sword that combined death, destruction, holiness, and majesty. Only the burial of heaven could merge these two completely different auras so perfectly. Therefore, this was the most special divine sword. Swoosh! The pitch-black sword chi finally retracted. The burial of heaven left the divine cauldron and flew across the sky. It slowly fell into Ji Tianqing's hand. Ji Tianqing held the burial of heaven in his hand and felt the surging power and aura of the emperor weapon. He also smiled with relief. Very good. He was very satisfied with the successful transformation of the burial of heaven into an emperor weapon. With the help of the emperor-level divine sword, his combat strength would double. If he were to face the temple masters of the Kongming Temple again, he would be more confident in defeating them. Of course, it was still impossible for him to defeat the first palace master by himself. After all, the first palace master was a god emperor who had already condensed 7 Taoist rhymes. Compared to the first palace master, the difference in strength and cultivation was too great. There was no chance of him winning. Swish! Ji Tianqing put away the sword of burial of heaven. Under the watchful eyes of the elite beast men, he clasped his hands to greet Sky Lai and Yen Li, bidding them farewell. Lai Tian and Yen Li knew that he had made up his mind and shouldered some kind of heavy responsibility. He had a reason to leave, so they didn't ask him to stay. However, the two of them had long reached an agreement. When Ji Tianqing was about to leave, they both said at the same time, "Brother Long Tian, after this farewell, we don't know when we will meet again. However, the beast race will always remember your kindness and will never let you down. Brother Long Tian, from now on, the beast race will be your staunchest friends. No matter when, no matter what difficulties you encounter, as long as you send a message, we will do our best to help you. This is our promise, and also the promise of all the beast race's citizens to you. In the future, when you are done with your business and have free time, we hope that you will come back and take a look. When that time comes, we will definitely let you see a completely different city." Lai Tian and Yen Li's words came from the bottom of their hearts and were sincere. When the lords and the elite beast men heard this, they all agreed. Ji Tianqing accepted with a smile. After exchanging a few words with Lai Tian and Yen Li and exchanging a batch of communication jade slips, he bid them farewell and left. Swoosh! He flew high into the sky, passed through layers of defensive formations, and left Li City. Lai Tian, Yen Li, and the others didn't go outside Li City to send him off. They just stood above the divine furnace and watched his back disappear outside the formation. After a long time, when Ji Tianqing was far away from Li City, the crowd came back to their senses. Alright, God Emperor Long Tian has left. Everyone, let's disperse. Without Brother Long Tian overseeing Li City, we will have to rely on ourselves from now on. I hope that everyone will not slack off and work harder. Lai Tian and Yan Li persuaded the lords and the elite beast men. Only then did the crowd gather their thoughts and disperse. After leaving Li City, Ji Tianqing took out the god-slaying battleship. It was still the White Dragon driving the battleship, flying east as fast as lightning. According to Ji Tianqing's plan, the White Dragon would drive the battleship across half of the unknown land and reach the territory of the temple in the east. After reaching the territory of the temple, Ji Tianqing would think of ways to investigate and search for the whereabouts of the God Emperor. When that time came, it would be the time for his revenge to begin. The White Dragon drove the battleship. Ji Tianqing returned to the distorted spacetime and continued to cultivate in seclusion. Next, with the speed of the god-slaying battleship, it would take about a month or so to fly out of the unknown land. The Kongming Temple, this great trouble, had already been resolved. After that, the god-slaying battleship would definitely be safe. Therefore, Ji Tianqing was not worried. What he should do now was to condense the third Dao rune as soon as possible. Time passed, day after day. The days of traveling were always dull and tedious. Fortunately, the White Dragon was long used to it. Ji Tianqing was also cultivating in seclusion in the distorted spacetime, concentrating wholeheartedly and did not notice the passage of time at all. Unknowingly, a month passed. Just as Ji Tianqing expected, in this month's time, the god-slaying battleship had been safe and sound. There were no waves along the way. Not to mention encountering any danger, there was not even a powerhouse who showed up to intercept the battleship. After leaving the unknown land, the god-slaying battleship continued to fly east for more than 1,000,000 miles before reaching the edge of Shangqing Temple's territory. Before entering the territory of Shangqing Temple, Ji Tianqing had long studied the information of Shangqing Temple. In general, Shangqing Temple, as one of the four great temples, was not inferior to the Kongming Temple in terms of power, foundation, population, and wealth. In fact, Shangqing Temple's geographical location was superior, and there were more treasures and supreme-grade materials in its territory. Its strength and foundation were stronger than the Kongming Temple's. Ji Tianqing temporarily ended his seclusion and instructed the White Dragon to fly slower when operating the battleship, especially to pay attention to camouflage and concealment. After all, there were crouching tigers and hidden dragons in the territory of Shangqing Temple. There might be a peak divine king or god emperor powerhouse in one of the border cities. Even if he had no enmity with Shangqing Temple at present, it was difficult for him, as a member of a foreign race, to not have a conflict after being discovered by the other party rashly entering the territory of Shangqing Temple. Moreover, Pan Roa had once told him that the Azura God Emperor was active in Shangqing Temple's territory. Although the Azura God Emperor was very proud and would not easily form an alliance with Shangqing Temple. However, things were unpredictable. Perhaps the Azura God Emperor had already pledged loyalty to Shangqing Temple in order to gain a foothold in the Star of Origin. In that case, once Ji Tianqing's whereabouts were exposed, the Azura God Emperor would definitely think of ways to use the power of Shangqing Temple to deal with him. Chapter 45-79. Ji Tianqing had been cultivating in the distorted spacetime for more than 4 years while the god-slaying battleship was on the way. Not only had he recovered to his peak state, but his strength had also improved. He had also made some progress in condensing his third Daoist rhyme. Not only was he ready to fight at any time, but even the tens of thousands of followers under his command had been conserving their energy and accumulating strength. Everyone was waiting for orders, waiting for the moment the war began. They would go out in their best state and kill the enemy bravely until the last moment. Therefore, the problem in front of everyone was how to find the Azura God Emperor as soon as possible and find the best opportunity to attack. Of course, the prerequisite for this was that Ji Tianqing could not easily expose himself. The territory of the Shangqing Temple was very large, with more than 70 districts under its jurisdiction and 74 divisions. Every branch had 1 or 2 peak divine kings, over 10,000 divine king realm experts, and hundreds of thousands of divine lord realm citizens. Compared to the territory of the Kongming Temple, the territory of the Shangqing Temple was more prosperous. Not only was the scenery more beautiful, but the mineral resources were also more abundant. As for the customs of the territories under the two temples, they were basically the same. They were all very calm and leisurely. After all, the Star of Origin had been peaceful for 100,000 years, and there had never been any major disputes or wars. The people of the four temples basically did not know what war was. It was only when they entered the unknown lands to train and hunt the beasts that they would be able to experience what it meant to fight and kill. This was because the border of the Shangqing Temple's territory did not have any fortifications at all. It was basically in a state of no defense. Only the divisions at the border sent a small number of divine kings to patrol the border area. Their mission was not to prevent foreign enemies from invading, but to prevent the beast tribes from the unknown lands from breaking into the Shangqing Temple's territory and causing trouble. Of course, for tens of thousands of years, the beast tribes had always been synonymous with weakness and ignorance. The Shangqing Temple had never taken the beast tribes seriously. The guards patrolling the border also lowered their guard and were very relaxed. This was because the god-slaying battleship maintained its stealth state and easily crossed the border and arrived near a division. This branch was called the Tri-Mountain Hall, and it ruled over a territory with a circumference of 100 million kilometers. It had over 300,000 citizens under its command, and its headquarters was located in Tri-Mountain City, which was surrounded by mountains and clear waters. The city spanned a radius of 200 miles and there were nearly 300,000 desolate race citizens living there. It was like an otherworldly paradise that was especially peaceful and tranquil. The Three-Mountain Hall still had 60 to 70,000 desolate race citizens under its command. They were scattered throughout the territory, hidden in the mountains, forming small towns or villages. Anyway, the planet of origin had always been peaceful. There were no wars. Those small towns and villages had fewer people, so there was nothing to worry about. This created an opportunity for Ji Tianqing. It also left a path for him to sneak in and gather information. Near Three Mountain City, he put away the god-slaying battleship and began to move alone. He remained invisible and concealed his aura. First, he observed outside the city for half a day. As expected, the vast Three Mountain City had tall city walls, powerful formations, and tight defenses. Furthermore, the 300,000 desolate race citizens that lived in the city rarely left the Three Mountain City. Most of the citizens that entered and exited the city were the guards and experts under the Three Mountain Hall. They formed groups to carry out missions. Thankfully, Ji Tianqing secretly released his perception and used mystic techniques to probe the situation in Three Mountain City. He only sensed the auras of countless godly monarch experts, but he did not sense the existence of the God Emperor. In other words, the Shangqing Divine Hall only had a few God Emperor experts. The chances of them coming to Three Mountain City were very small. Ji Tianqing's luck was still considered normal. Without the God Emperor experts in Three Mountain City, he had a lot of room to show his abilities. Hence, he quietly approached the city gates and waited for an opportunity to sneak in. Three Mountain City was a city that hung alone in the borderlands. It rarely interacted with other branch cities. Hence, when the desolate race craftsmen built the city, they only built one city gate. As long as the city protecting array was activated, everyone could only enter through the city gates. The city protecting array was a supreme grade king-ranked divine array, not an emperor-ranked divine array. Ji Tianqing could crack it with a bit of time and effort. However, there was no need for him to do so. It was a waste of time and effort, and there was a certain level of danger. He hid near the city gates for 2 hours before he waited for a group of desolate race divine lords that had gone out to gather resources to return. These people were exhausted and looked tired, but they were in high spirits. Clearly, they had returned from a rewarding journey. The guards guarding the city gates greeted them warmly and exchanged a few pleasantries with them. While no one was paying attention, Ji Tianqing quietly transformed into a speck of dust and followed the group of desolate race divine lords into Three Mountain City. After entering Three Mountain City, Ji Tianqing strolled around leisurely. As he observed the situation in the city, he listened to the sounds from all directions and gathered all sorts of information. Now, he was already proficient in the desolate race's language and writing. As he walked through Three Mountain City invisibly, he would not be discovered by others. He could also see all the streets and pavilions in the city, and hear all sorts of sounds in half the city. The shouts from the roadside shops, the sounds of bargaining, the laughter of the desolate race citizens, as well as the whispers in the rooms, were all transmitted into Ji Tianqing's mind. Even though 99% of the sounds were worthless and could not provide him with any useful information. However, Ji Tianqing's countless years of experience concluded that by listening to the sounds of the entire city, it was easier for him to obtain all sorts of information. It was just a little more troublesome. He needed to filter out the useful information, and then analyze and organize it to obtain what he wanted. 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. Ji Tianqing strolled through Three Mountain City. He walked through countless streets, saw rows upon rows of palaces, pavilions, and courtyards. He also walked through numerous gardens and lakes. From dawn to dusk, and then to night. He walked through the entire Three Mountain City, and through the thousands of pieces of information he gathered, he filtered out the useful information and organized it. Finally, he obtained a lot of useful information. For example, there was a very important matter that alarmed Ji Tianqing. Many godly king realm citizens in Three Mountain City were discussing it. Not long ago, the Shangqing Divine Hall had issued an order to select 100 elite godly king experts from the various divisions. 3 months later, all the elite godly kings selected from the 74 divisions would gather at the Shangqing Divine Hall's headquarters to participate in the selection of elite experts. Although the desolate race citizens did not know why the Shangqing Divine Hall wanted to select so many elite godly kings. However, everyone was guessing that the Shangqing Divine Hall had never held such an event or competition in the past 10,000 years. The selection of elite godly kings was definitely very important, and there was a deeper meaning behind it. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.